Chapter 832 Fruit Planting You. TED by BXN0VL. Siamacron M, and among those rare individuals, finding a woman like Xuan was even more extraordinary. Qiao felt a sense of admiration and gratitude towards the couple, so he presented them with a pot of green first-class orchids and a pot of Songmei orchids. These orchids were not only rare and valuable, but also possessed breathtaking beauty. Shao Yunduan and Xiao Xian graciously accepted the gifts, appreciating Xie Jingrong's kind gesture. 2 days later, the papayas and dragon fruits were successfully planted. They had managed to cultivate 30 mu of papayas and 50 mu of dragon fruits, which was half of what Xiao Xian had initially anticipated. However, they viewed this as an experimental phase and were willing to take things slowly. Surviving the upcoming winter was crucial. If they could endure and thrive during this season, it would pave the way for their success in the future. Xiao Xian had a plan to gradually expand their cultivation once they had proven their resilience. Failure to survive the winter would mean the end for their endeavors. Shao Yunduan and Xiao Xian diligently inspected the plants, and Xiao Xian secretly utilized her superpower to enhance their growth. She carefully infused vitality and energy into the roots, akin to providing them with the best possible nourishment. However, Xiao Xian had her limitations when using her superpower. It drained her energy, and maintaining secrecy proved to be challenging. The entire process consumed an entire afternoon. When they were finally finished, Xiao Xian let out a sigh of relief, feeling physically and mentally exhausted. She was grateful that her energy would replenish overnight, allowing her to continue her work the following day. Realizing that their efforts thus far were insufficient, Xiao Xian instructed the manager to refrain from stacking the prepared corn stalks and straw. She wanted to ensure that if a severe frost occurred, the straw could be burned to create dense smoke, providing warmth to the surrounding air and protecting the fruit seedlings. As the day grew colder, the fields required the additional coverage of straw to safeguard the delicate roots. 2 days before their departure, Xiao Xian decided to infuse more of her superpower into the plants. She planned to provide them with an extra boost of energy during their visit to the province a month before the new year, when they would purchase supplies. By employing all available methods, Xiao Xian believed that the effects would prove to be favorable. After bidding farewell to First Madam Yuezhing Shao and Xie Jingrong, Xiao Xian and Shao Yunwan didn't spend much time in the province. Following the fruit and seed planting, they embarked on their journey back to the county. On their way to the village, they unexpectedly encountered Ms.Zhang, who had returned once again. Spotting Ms.Zhang from their cart, they momentarily doubted their eyes. However, Ms.Zhang sneered at them with a rigid expression and swiftly departed without saying a word. Upon their arrival home, Xiao Xian and Shao Yunduan were warmly received by their family members who assisted them in sorting through the gifts and unloading the luggage. Xiao Xian's curiosity got the better of her, and she couldn't resist asking about what had transpired in their absence. Ms. Fong sneered and responded with irony, "Ah, that woman. The other night, during the rain, she came and fainted right at the doorstep of the second section of the family's home. And there she stayed. Erlang still has some lingering feelings for her, after all." Yang Xiani's eyes sparkled with excitement as she eagerly prepared to share the story. Xiao Xian captured the moment in a picture, wanting to remember it. Since her divorce, Ms. Zhang had been leading a tumultuous life with her mother and the rest of the family. She was constantly sobbing, her eyes red with grief. She expressed longing for her children and husband, and she carried a heavy burden of guilt regarding her brother. Her days were filled with sorrow. Mrs. Zhang voiced her frustration, complaining that Ms. Zhang was utterly useless and that she never saw her wear a happy expression. Chapter 833 Ms. Zhang's Return You. TED by BXN0VL. Siamacron M. Mrs. Zhang's annoyance with Ms. Zhang grew stronger, as she believed her daughter not only brought no benefits to the family, but also caused her precious son to be beaten. Consequently, Ms. Zhang was cast out by the Shao family and forced to rely on her mother's support. Mrs. Zhang's frustration escalated, leading to verbal and physical abuse towards Ms. Zhang. She compelled her daughter to rise before daybreak and perform exhausting labor in the fields, while intentionally depriving her of sufficient food. Ms. Zhang received only half a bowl of rice and a bowl of rotten vegetables, devoid of salt and oil. She was constantly referred to as the useless woman and trash who only consumed without contributing anything positive to the family. This treatment left Ms. Zhang feeling deeply saddened and burdened by guilt. She believed herself to be useless to her mother's family and accepted the curses and blame as her way of atoning for her perceived sins. Silently enduring the hardships, Ms. Zhang worked even harder, convinced that it was the only way to repay her sins and earn her mother's forgiveness. Unfortunately, her physical strength waned, and she soon fell ill due to exhaustion and hunger. Ms. Zhang held onto the hope that her illness would garner care, forgiveness, or at least a decent meal, considering the tremendous effort she had put into her work. However, Mrs. Zhang responded with even more furious curses and harsh disappointment, shattering Ms. Zhang's expectations. Mrs. Zhang directed her anger towards Ms. Zhang, accusing her of intentionally falling ill to avoid work and bringing misfortune to the family as a heartless and wicked woman. She withheld any concern, care, or food from her daughter, offering only disdain and hatred. These words pierced Ms. Zhang's heart like a sharp blade. Her hope crumbled, shattered by her mother's lack of compassion. Shocked and disheartened, Ms. Zhang's motivation to work hard diminished. She became less active in labor, frequently pausing and becoming lost in her thoughts. Tears would stream down her face as she cried silently. Mrs. Zhang, however, grew even more relentless in her treatment of Ms. Zhang. She continued to berate her for being useless, emphasizing that even receiving any portion of food at home was futile, as she believed raising her had been a pointless endeavor. Ms. Zhang felt immense sadness, shedding tears in solitude every day. Unable to bear it any longer, a few days ago, she impulsively fled Zhang Village and embarked on a journey to Shading Village, crying heavily along the way. So one morning, when Ms. Niu opened her home's door, she let out a piercing scream, nearly fainting in fright at the sight of a disheveled and distressed woman standing in the cold weather. As Ms. Niu realized that the woman at her gate was Ms. Zhang, she couldn't bring herself to allow her former daughter-in-law to collapse there. Despite her stingy and greedy nature, she couldn't leave her in such a dire state, especially considering the cold and rainy weather that could have led to her demise. Begrudgingly, Ms. Niu enlisted the help of Ms. Yin to carry Ms. Zhang into a room, where she was provided with a bowl of ginger soup. It was an act of begrudging kindness, compelled by the circumstances. In the evening, when Shao Erlang returned home and discovered the situation, he was taken aback and immediately went to summon a doctor. Overwhelmed with emotions, the couple embraced each other and wept. Shao Erlang hadn't anticipated the extent of the suffering Ms. Zhang had endured in her own home. Seeing her dressed in tattered clothing, significantly thinner, and with hands marred by wounds and scars, his heart softened. The sight of their mother in such a pitiful state brought tears streaming down the faces of their two children. Chapter 834, Their Fault You. TED by BXN0VL. Xiao Shao Erlang's determination to protect Ms. Zhang and ensure her safety was unwavering. He refused to drive her away, understanding that it would only lead to her demise. Desperate, he knelt down before his parents, Ms. Niu and second uncle, pleading for their forgiveness and begging them to allow Ms. Zhang to stay. He promised to take responsibility for her, vowing to guide her and prevent her from making any further mistakes. However, he made it clear that his compassion was contingent on their acceptance of Ms. Zhang. Initially, both second uncle and Ms. Niu were infuriated by Shao Erlang's pleas. They hurled curses at him, deeming him foolish for his persistence. They reluctantly agreed to let Ms. Zhang stay, primarily for the sake of the children. Shao Erlang's relentless persuasion had worn them down, though their resentment toward Ms. Zhang was apparent. Ms. Zhang overheard their conversation, and a sense of bitterness welled up within her. She had been treated as a slave within her own family, and the moment she had access to decent food and clothing, she forgot about her past misery. Now, she harbored a deep hatred towards Ms. Niu and second uncle, blaming them for the circumstances she found herself in. In her mind, if they had shown her even a modicum of kindness, she would not have fallen into such a desperate situation. She held them responsible for her misfortune. Despite Ms. Zhang's troubled presence, her husband, Shao Erlang, remained the only redeeming figure within the Shao family. The rest of the family members were seen as lacking in goodness and virtue. Nis. Zhang soon caused trouble once again, and this time it seemed that her fate was sealed. Tearful apologies and kowtows ensued, forcing Ms. Niu to reluctantly tolerate Ms. Zhang's presence once more. The situation infuriated Ms. Yen, who vented her frustrations to Shao Xilang behind closed doors. In an attempt to placate his wife, Shao Xilang resorted to flattery and consolation. Only then did Ms. Yen find some solace. With Ms. Zhang back in the household, it became imperative to retrieve the divorce papers. Ms. Niu enlisted the help of Shao Erlang and several villagers from the same village to retrieve the documents from the Zhang village. It was necessary to rectify the situation, as having Ms. Zhang remain under their roof without the proper legal documentation would tarnish the family's reputation. However, to their surprise, the Zhang family, including Mrs. Zhang, proved to be peculiar individuals. They insisted that since Ms. Zhang had divorced and remarried, the Shao family must compensate them with wedding gifts before they would release the divorce papers. Since Ms. Zhang was not divorced for too long, the Zhang family called for just 30 liang as the wedding gifts. Otherwise, there would be no divorce paper. Ms. Niu was utterly shocked by Mrs. Zhang's shameless behavior. She vehemently refused to offer any monetary compensation, condemning Mrs. Zhang as greedy and outrageous. In her view, 30 liang was far too exorbitant. With that amount, they could easily find a new, young girl to marry Shao Erlang. According to Ms. Niu, Ms. Zhang was not worth 30 liang at all. She decided not to pursue the divorce papers any further. Instead, she planned to bring Ms. Zhang back to their own family and seek out a matchmaker to find a pretty and beautiful young girl for Shao Erlang's marriage. Mrs. Zhang seethed with anger, accusing the Shao family of bullying. Ms. Niu sharply retorted, telling Shao Erlang to accompany her home. She declared that she did not need such despicable relatives. Shao Erlang was equally taken aback by the situation. He had not anticipated this turn of events. The Zhang family's demands were excessive, and their behavior bordered on harassment. Shao Erlang chose to remain silent, recognizing that further involvement would likely invite even more trouble. Eventually, someone informed the land officer about the situation. The land officer deemed the matter too humiliating for the village and intervened to restore peace. He compelled Mrs. Zhang to provide the divorce papers. The land officer regarded Ms. Zhang as fortunate that the Shao family was willing to accept her. Mrs. Zhang's demand for 30 liang as a wedding gift was considered nonsensical. She appeared to be driven solely by a desire for maximum profit, charging exorbitant amounts without any sense of reason or fairness. Chapter 835, Miserable You. TED by BXN0VL. Xiaomacron M. However, Ms. Niu had no interest in bargaining with Mrs. Zhang. She simply stated that she no longer needed Ms. Zhang and insisted that she should return to her own home. Mrs. Zhang started to panic. She wished that Ms. Zhang could stay with the Shao family, as they were living a more prosperous life. Mrs. Zhang believed that they could surely benefit from having Ms. Zhang in their household. The intervention of the land officer forced Mrs. Zhang to concede. She had no choice but to offer the divorce papers. The chaotic situation finally came to an end. People inside and outside the village ridiculed the Zhang family for their irrational behavior. The family's reputation suffered a severe blow due to having a divorced daughter and an unmarried girl in their household. The Zhang family's demand for 30 liang as a remarriage gift was seen as outrageous and embarrassing. Ms. Zhang returned to the Shao family, but she knew she would face mockery and disdain. She had become a target of hatred due to her past actions. People showed no friendliness towards Ms. Zhang. Those who used to socialize with her now kept their distance. They hurried past her or took alternate routes to avoid her. Women with children regarded her with caution, eyeing her warily as if she might dose a threat to their children. Fearing that Ms. Zhang would TRV to kidnap them for money, Ms. Zhang felt a deep sense of misery and bitterness mixed with anger. She resented those people who judged her without understanding the difficulties she had faced. She believed she had been driven to her actions. Simultaneously, Ms. Zhang harbored resentment towards Ms. Niu, the matriarch of the Shao family, and everyone else from the Shao family. She viewed them as cruel and heartless, attributing her current circumstances to their actions. No one was aware of the depth of Ms. Zhang's grudge, but she was now back in her husband's home. Hearing Yang Xiaoni and Ms. Fang's gossip, Qiao Xian found herself at a loss for words. However, she wasn't entirely surprised by the situation. Ms. Zhang, with her 2 young children, collapsed at the gate of the house. Shao Erlang, still having feelings for his wife, was determined to keep her by his side. However, given the previous incidents, people were becoming increasingly wary of her, and it seemed like a volatile situation was about to erupt. Qiao Xian doubted that Ms. Zhang would be able to stay in the second section of the family for long. She inquired, "How does second aunt-in-law treat Ms. Zhang? Is she kind to her?" "Of course not." Yang Xiaoni eagerly shared the details. She pursed her lips, expressing disdain, and replied, "Second aunt-in-law never treats her well, given what she did in the past. According to what the 4th sister-in-law told me, Ms. Zhang is not allowed to participate in any family matters. She is prohibited from entering the kitchen or being near the children. Second aunt-in-law watches her closely, as if she were a thief. After breakfast, she is forced to work in the fields and is not allowed to return until lunchtime. The same continues in the afternoon, and she isn't allowed to come home until evening. They won't let her stay at home anyway, fearing she might come up with some strange ideas again." Chapter 836, Unpredictable You. TED by BXN0VL. Xiaomacron M. Qiao Xian's heart raced with concern. It was understandable that Ms. Niu might feel anxious after the previous incident. However, her current behavior seemed excessive. Qiao Xian worried that Ms. Zhang could suffer mentally from such treatment. Although Ms. Zhang had been described as narrow-minded, dumb, and extreme, her potential actions remained unpredictable. Considering that Ms. Niu had agreed to take Ms. Zhang in, it was inappropriate to treat her this way. However, Ms. Niu was not enthusiastic about accepting Ms. Zhang in the first place. It was Shao Erlang who insisted, and Ms. Niu herself was not known for being open-minded. The situation was becoming increasingly chaotic, and the future appeared uncertain to all involved. Qiao Xian confided in Ms. Fang, seeking her opinion on the matter. Ms. Fang furrowed her brows and spoke abruptly. "Your second aunt-in-law is also causing trouble with her foolishness. If she chose to take her in, she should let go of the past and be more open-minded. What's the point otherwise?" Qiao Xian expressed concern that another incident might occur, especially for the sake of the 2 young children involved. They were innocent and deserved better. In light of this, Qiao Xian pondered whether it was necessary to warn Ms. Niu after all, and shared these thoughts with Ms. Fang. Ms. Qiao's face brightened with a smile upon hearing Ms. Fang's words. "Mom, you're so understanding. You can have a conversation with second-in-law, but ultimately, it's up to her whether she wants to accept it." "Exactly. I can only provide the warning, but I can't force her to listen. Their family affairs are not my concern." Soon, Ms. Fang approached Ms. Niu to discuss the matter. However, Ms. Niu dismissed every word Ms. Fang said, even going so far as to label her as nosy and relishing in her supposed misery. Treating Ms. Zhang better was out of the question for Ms. Niu. She believed that Ms. Fang's intentions were to ensure they didn't lead a good life. Ms. Fang grew increasingly frustrated by this response. She vented her frustrations at home, only ceasing when Qiao Xian and Yang Xiaoni tried to console her. The warning had been given, but not accepted. Nevertheless, they no longer felt guilty about not passing on the message. They would be cautious to avoid becoming entangled in their misfortune. The first section of the family had a good relationship with Ms. Yen. So, when Nis. Yen came to visit, Yang Xiaoni discreetly offered her some reminders to be prepared. However, there was no need to inform others about this. Ms. Yen was taken aback by the revelation. Ms. Yen also recognized that her mother-in-law's behavior was excessive. She had not anticipated the potential mental distress that Ms. Zhang might experience or the possibility of her engaging in further unpredictable actions. Nevertheless, the warning served as a reminder and left her feeling uneasy. Ms. Yen nodded in agreement and assured Qiao Xian that she was aware of the situation. Admittedly, Ms. Zhang had a peculiar temperament, and under the treatment she received from Ms. Niu, she could potentially cause trouble once again. Ms. Yen, however, wanted to avoid getting entangled in the situation. She questioned why she had to be involved in the first place. Subsequently, people's attention began to shift away from Ms. Zhang as a significant event unfolded in the village. A military recruitment order had been issued for Shouting Village. The Ding family and the Shao family were each required to send one person to join the army. Panic spread throughout the village as families with less than 2 sons became anxious. The realization that joining the army meant potential suffering and the risk of being killed in battle made everyone desperate to prevent their sons from being drafted. The only exceptions were families too impoverished to support their child or those who harbored dislike towards their own offspring. Chapter 837 Chi's Wish You. Ted by Eavesdropping. Siamacron M. However, the villagers in this area were leading relatively comfortable lives. No families were without a home or lacked food. Consequently, the idea of getting involved in the military recruitment was met with reluctance. Unexpectedly, Qi himself proposed to join the army, catching his family off guard. It happened right after they had enjoyed a delightful dinner prepared by Qiao Xian. Everyone was taken aback, thinking they must have misheard him. Qi reiterated his proposal, and Ms. Fong immediately snapped at him. "You foolish child." She raised her hand as if to slap him, but the others intervened swiftly, preventing any harm. "Qi, don't be reckless. You can't speak of such matters so casually. Yes, we have more than enough food and clothing at home. Joining the army is extremely dangerous. Stay here with us. Going into battle as a soldier is terrifying. It's much safer to remain at home. You're still young and ignorant. Don't go, just stay with us. Listen carefully. This discussion must not leave this room or reach anyone else. I will not hesitate to deal with anyone who spreads this news." Only Qiao Xian and Shao Yunduan remained silent, contemplating the situation. Qi felt deeply saddened by his family's reactions. He turned to Shao Yunduan, his 5th brother, and asked with determination, "Do you also find me ridiculous? Do you object to my proposal?" "Don't speak to him. Of course, he objects. Let's end this discussion now, or I will beat you." Ms. Fong became irritated once again, and she was about to physically harm Qi when the others intervened and stopped her. Through sobs, Ms. Fong exclaimed, "You foolish boy. You're deliberately trying to anger me. We had just started to experience happiness in our lives, and now this." Shao Yunduan spoke in a gentle tone. "Mom, please don't worry. Dad, let me have a private conversation with Qi. We'll have a meaningful talk." Ms. Fong and eldest uncle sighed with relief. Ms. Fong nodded, saying, "Convince him to change his mind." "Don't worry, Mom." Shao Yunduan led Qi away to the study in his own yard. Inside the study, Qi lowered his head, biting his lip, visibly distressed. Shao Yunduan looked at Qi intently and let out a heartfelt sigh. Qi had grown taller and stronger. He was no longer a child. In another 2 or 3 years, Qi might even surpass his older brother in height and strength. Would he become stronger than him as well? Qi had already displayed impressive capabilities. He could hunt large animals with ease, displaying remarkable skill and agility. His sharp gaze and proficiency with the bow made him truly admirable. It was impossible for anyone to perceive him as just an ordinary teenager, given his exceptional abilities. Shao Yunwan honestly didn't believe that he should confine Qi indoors. Qi, not as eloquent as his fifth brother, scratched his head and turned to Shao Yunwan. Fifth brother, I can take care of myself. Please let me join the army. Shao Yunwan asked. Are you certain about this? Qi nodded vigorously, his determination evident. Yes. I really want to join the army. You understand that joining the army is not a trivial matter. Once you're enlisted, there's no turning back. Deserters are beheaded. When you're in the camp, you'll start as a low-ranking soldier, enduring the harshest living and eating conditions, worse than what our family has experienced in the past. If you have a harsh commander, your life will become even more miserable. Chapter 838 Deep Consideration You. TED by BX0VL. Xiao daily training will be grueling, and in times of war, soldiers like you will be on the front lines. There's a real risk of losing your life or being used as bait. Aren't you afraid of that? Shao Yunwan questioned. Even if I become an officer as an advanced scholar from a recommended man, I may not be able to help you. Besides, the army doesn't consider where you're from. Your fate will depend solely on your own actions once you're there. Are you still determined to join the army? Xiao Xiaoqi was taken aback, but his hesitation only lasted for a moment before he nodded. Fifth brother, I'm not afraid. I want to join the army. I feel the need to do something meaningful with my life, or ill regret it in the future. With you and fifth sister-in-law at home, I won't fear anything or have anything to be afraid of. That's enough for me. Shao Yunwan chuckled. You're just a kid. What do you understand about the things adults talk about? Don't worry about our family. Xiao Xiaoqi smiled sheepishly. Don't answer me so hastily. Take some rest and think it over. The recruitment process won't be completed so quickly. The deadline is still a few days away. Take a couple of days to ponder on it and let me know then. Xiao Zioqi's eyes brightened. He added, Fifth brother L. No more words for now. Pretend I haven't heard anything. Go and contemplate. Don't make any impulsive decisions. Qi, this is your life, and one won't interfere. But you must take responsibility for your choices and think through them thoroughly. Remember, you have loving parents and siblings who genuinely care about you. Tears welled up in Xiao Zioqi's eyes as he nodded. Xiao Xiaoqi quietly retreated to his own room to avoid his mother's scolding. Shao Yunwan contemplated something else in the study before gathering his thoughts and heading to his parents. Ms. Fong anxiously inquired, Did you stop him? Where is he? Don't worry, Mom. Shao Yunwan reassured her with a smile. Elle explained everything to him and gave him 2 more days to think it over. Mom and Dad, let's not keep nagging about this. Let's wait and see. Ms. Fong declared, One will never agree to this. He's not going anywhere. I will keep him confined to a room until the recruitment period passes. I will definitely put a stop to it. Qiao Xian remained silent, observing the conversation. Xiao Sanlang rubbed his hands together and enthusiastically agreed, stating it was a brilliant idea. They should indeed do that. Shao Yunwan sighed helplessly. Qi is a grown man, not an object to be controlled. It wouldn't be fair to confine him. I don't care. I am his mother, and am doing this for his own good. Ms. Fong retorted. However, she cast a skeptical glance at Shao Yunwan. Duan, tell me, did you agree with his decision? Xiao Sanlang chimed in, Mom, of course not. Fifth brother would never be so unreliable. Xiao Dalong nodded in agreement. Absolutely, fifth brother is always level-headed. Xiao Xian pondered for a moment, then winked at Shao Yunwan with a smile. Shao Yunwan rubbed his nose and cleared his throat. Regardless, Mom, don't worry. She will do just fine. Ms. Fong sighed and muttered, I still can't shake off this uneasy feeling in my heart. Chapter 839 Not for Her You. TED by BX0VL. Siamacron they couldn't reach a definite conclusion, leaving everyone in a state of unease. They sought solace in one another's company, particularly the parents, before retiring to their respective rooms. Once they were alone, Xiao Xian smiled at Shao Yunwan. Darling, Is Qi really going? And you're supporting his decision? Shao Yunduan smiled bitterly. It appears that he has made up his mind. Besides, he's no longer a child. He has the right to make his own choices. It would be cruel to force him to stay. Shao Yunduan didn't want Qi to go, but ultimately it was his own life, and Shao Yunduan couldn't make decisions on his behalf. He turned to Qiao Xian. What do you think? Qiao Xian pondered for a moment and chuckled. Qi is quite capable of taking care of himself. He's not impulsive either. If you can advise him to be low profile, stay calm, and prioritize his well-being, and remind him of his family whenever he's about to engage in something dangerous, I believe everything will be fine. Qi is different from his peers. He has a brother like you. Maybe you won't be able to directly take care of him once you become an advanced scholar, but in a few years, you might be able to transfer him out of the camp if it's possible. Alternatively, we can provide some financial assistance. Just look at us now. We have connections with the Xie family. If you can ask them to write a recommendation letter for Qi, it could serve as a safeguard in case he encounters any trouble. So, I believe it's a viable idea. Qi is so talented. It would be a waste for him to stay at home for the rest of his life. Qiao Xian suppressed her urge to reveal her clairvoyant abilities. After all, they were sporadic, and she couldn't predict Qi's entire future. If only she could glimpse a small portion of it in secret. Shao Yunduan smiled. Your analysis has eased my mind. Indeed, if Qi has made up his mind, he should go. I will approach the Xie family for a recommendation letter as his safeguard. With his skills, he should be able to protect himself. If the hardships become unbearable, we can find a way to bring him home in a few years. Qiao Xian smiled. That's a conservative estimate. I almost believe he has the potential to become an official with his talents. Shao Yunduan chuckled and shook his head. That might not be necessary. The most important thing is that he remains safe and well. Qiao Xian inquired. So, how do you plan to break this news to our parents? Shao Yunduan. That was indeed a troublesome task. Qiao Xian shook her head and raised her hands. Don't look at me. I'm not going to do it. It was evident that anyone who brought up this topic would face scolding, including Shao Yunduan. Qiao Xian had no intention of taking on such a task. Shao Yunduan was torn between amusement and exasperation. Of course not you, my dear. I will handle it. He wouldn't allow her to be scolded. Being his mother's son, he would shield her from any scolding. Qiao Xian chuckled. You're the best. The couple continued their conversation, sharing laughter, and eventually settled down. She was quite mischievous. He managed to avoid spending much time alone with Ms. Fong, an eldest uncle these days. Chapter 840, Getting Scolded You. TED by BX0VL. Xiao, despite agreeing to let Qi think for a couple more days, Ms. Fong couldn't stop worrying about the situation. She wanted to have a serious conversation with Qi, urging him to think carefully. However, Qi managed to avoid her at all costs, which only increased Ms. Fang's frustration. The mother's relentless pursuit was met with the son's constant evasion, creating a sort of guerrilla warfare between them. The rest of the family found the situation amusing, but refrained from laughing, fearing it might escalate the tension. Finally, the 2 days had passed, and the atmosphere in the household was tense. Ms. Fong, eldest uncle, Qi, and Shao Yunduan were all on edge. As the middleman, Shao Yunduan had the weighty task of negotiating between them. But Qi remained resolute in his decision to join the army. Ms. Fong snapped at him and even attempted to hit him, but her anger couldn't sway his determination. After venting her frustration, Ms. Fong became overwhelmed with anxiety and broke down in tears. If you don't want to get married now, we'll stop anyone from coming to our door. We'll wait until you're willing to get married. But don't get so angry about our arrangements that you want to leave home. Ms. Su and Yang Xiaoni were taken aback and didn't know how to respond. Shao Yunduan and Xiao Xian were completely baffled by the situation. Shao Yunduan said, Mom, what happened? She wouldn't leave home just because he's angry. He and Taotao won't get married unless they're willing to. We don't force them into anything. Ms. Fong continued to sob and shake her head, unable to fully express her feelings. Sensing her distress, Yang Xiaoni decided to share her insights. Yang Xiaoni explained that she was no longer young, and as he grew older, many suitors came to the door seeking a marriage arrangement. This had motivated Ms. Fong to explore potential matches for him. After all, good suitors were not always easy to find. On the second day after Qiao Xian and Shao Yunwan had left home, a distant cousin of Ms. Fang's suddenly appeared at their door with her 2 daughters. Although they hadn't interacted frequently in the past, they were still family, and Ms. Fong was delighted to see them. This cousin seemed to be quite lively and quickly engaged in a cheerful conversation with Ms. Fong. This cousin was not here without purpose. She was here to build a martial alliance. She was trying to make Ms. Fong to let she marry one of her 2 daughters. Ms. Fong was not easily swayed by her cousin's proposition. Although they were relatives, they hadn't maintained a close relationship over the years. Ms. Fong felt it was necessary to gather more information about this relative and her 2 daughters before making any decisions regarding the marital alliance. Rather than rejecting the idea outright, Ms. Fong tactfully expressed that her son was still young, and it would be prudent to wait for a couple more days before discussing the matter further. The cousin agreed and understood, remarking that parents were always deeply concerned about their children's well-being and should carefully consider all aspects before entering into a marital alliance. Ms. Fong was relieved that she could buy some time to properly evaluate the situation and make an informed decision for her son's future. She wanted to ensure that any potential match would be suitable and compatible, taking into account both personal and family considerations. Chapter 841, Deep Night You. TED by BX0VL. Xiaomacron M. After hearing that, Ms. Fong felt a pang of guilt and realized that she had been too harsh with her cousin. It seemed that her cousin was actually quite reasonable and level-headed. The 2 nieces appeared to be quiet, gentle, and even attractive. Perhaps they could be a suitable choice after all. NIS. Fong was almost ready to make a decision. She decided to observe Qi's reaction first and see if he was open to accepting them, before finalizing any alliance. However, she soon discovered that her distant cousin was deceitful. She was scheming to manipulate her eldest daughter into seducing Qi, hoping to force the Shao family into marrying her daughter. As the girl entered the Shao family's luxurious home, she couldn't help but envy their wealth. The house was grand and well-lit, and everyone in the Shao family was adorned with jade bracelets and silver ornaments. They enjoyed plentiful meals with meat, unlike her own family who often had to make do with simple grains and rice. This made her even more jealous. Feeling desperate when Ms. Fong didn't readily approve of their proposal, the girl's mother came up with a terrible idea. Despite her nervousness, she gathered her courage and reluctantly agreed to the plan. Initially, their plan was to stage a fall, pretending to accidentally stumble into Qi's arms. However, they soon realized that this wouldn't be solid evidence to convince Ms. Fong. She could easily deny it and cause a commotion. It was clear that Ms. Fong had reservations about them, which made her unwilling to proceed. If they only relied on a stage fall, she could easily dismiss it and create a fuss about the incident. Only when the girl's reputation was completely ruined would their deceitful plan have a chance of success. That evening, after dinner, the girl made an excuse to retire early to her guest room. However, instead of sleeping, she sneaked into Qi's yard and eventually into his room. Qi had his own yard, and his room's door was left unlocked, even during the night. It was an easy task for the girl to enter unnoticed. Coincidentally, earlier in the day, Ms. Fong had left Qi's blankets out in the sun to air, but had forgotten to bring them back to his room. As Qi carried the blankets back to his bedroom, Ms. Fong accompanied him, holding a lamp to light their way. Upon entering the room, they noticed a silhouette projected on the wall. At first, they were startled, but they quickly regained their composure. Qi, known for his bravery and skill in handling crises, silently gestured to Ms. Fong, urging her to stay calm. With careful steps, Qi approached and grasped the object responsible for the silhouette. The girl, caught off guard by Qi's presence, let out a scream of fright. Both Ms. Fong and Qi were taken aback by the unexpected situation unfolding before them. Their shock intensified upon realizing the girl's late-night presence. What could she possibly be doing here at such a time? Soon, realization dawned upon Ms. Fong, and a wave of embarrassment flushed over her. She, on the other hand, was instantly overcome with a mixture of anger and embarrassment. It became clear to both of them that this girl had deliberately snuck into an unmarried man's room and concealed herself in the corner with a specific motive in mind. Meanwhile, the cousin who had orchestrated this plan had been extremely anxious and completely focused on the task at hand. Although the Shao family had a sizable yard, it was not as expansive as those belonging to true noble and affluent families. Considering the proximity of the rooms, if a scream were to erupt, it would undoubtedly reach the ears of the other family members. Chapter 842, A Trick You. Ted by BXN0VL. Xiao, the entire family was taken aback by the events unfolding before them. Upon hearing her daughter's genuine scream, the cousin felt a mix of surprise and inner satisfaction. The authenticity of the scream delighted her, as it seemed her daughter had played her part convincingly. Xiaoqi, despite his gentle and introverted demeanor, had surprised the cousin with his apparent eagerness. It served as a reminder not to judge people solely based on their outward appearance. The cousin's pride swelled within her, fueling her next actions. Hastily, she rushed forward, not even taking a moment to clearly assess the situation behind the door. "Oh, my poor girl, you must have been mistreated. I will seek justice for you and ensure you don't suffer any longer." Ah? Before she could finish her words, a forceful slap landed on her face. Ms. Fong, pointing accusatorily at her, screamed in outrage. "Why are you screaming? What justice are you talking about? I demand an explanation as to why your daughter is in my son's room. What devious plans have you concocted, you shameless woman?" Startled, the cousin finally noticed Ms. Fang's presence. Her face filled with astonishment as she covered her stinging cheek, momentarily ignoring the pain. "Cousin, what are you doing here?" With a sneer, Ms. Fang retorted. "I was here, holding the lamp for my son. Of course I am here. Thankfully, I am here, or else my son would have fallen into your trap." The cousin was taken aback, turning instinctively to look at her daughter, seeking answers in her eyes. It was only in that moment that the cousin realized her daughter's panic had been genuine, causing a surge of regret to wash over her. Caught red-handed by Ms. Fong, the cousin found herself in a powerless position. As an outsider to the village, she was at a significant disadvantage compared to Ms. Fong, who was the mother of the provincial champion. Moreover, the Shao family had recently made substantial contributions to the village, including building a school and donating vast tracts of land to the clan. The village would undoubtedly rally behind Ms. Fong, further isolating the cousin. The next day, the cousin and her two daughters swiftly disappeared, seeking to escape the repercussions of their actions. Ms. Fong, in order to preserve their reputation, decided to keep the incident a secret, ensuring that no one in the family would ever speak of it. However, from that point forward, she vowed to sever all ties with the cousin's family. Qi, likely startled by the entire ordeal, advised Ms. Fong against arranging any future martial unions for him. Ms. Fong couldn't help but laugh and cry at the same time. She refused to let Qi entertain such thoughts and resolved to find a suitable suitor, promising herself that such a situation would never occur again. She had no choice but to comply and refrain from mentioning the incident any further. However, on this particular day, Ms. Fong spoke of the incident, even entertaining the belief that she had chosen to leave home and join the army to evade any future marital arrangements. The rest of the family was left dumbfounded upon hearing this conjecture, unsure of how to respond. Eldest uncle remained silent, his disapproval evident on his somber face. Feeling helpless, Qi turned to Shao Yunduan, his expression filled with longing and desperation. Shao Yunduan let out a heavy sigh, his head throbbing with the weight of the situation. He decided to lead Ms. Fong and eldest uncle into the hall, seeking a private space for a conversation. Inside the hall, faint murmurs of argument could be heard, but they quickly gave way to Ms. Fang's heart-wrenching sobs. Qi felt a profound sense of sadness wash over him, and his head drooped gradually. He began to consider the possibility of relinquishing his desire to join the army if it meant alleviating his mother's distress and waiting for another opportunity in the future. However, Shao Yunduan, through his persuasive efforts, managed to sway eldest uncle and Ms. Fong. With a sudden burst of emotion, Ms. Fong rushed out of the hall, engulfing Qi in a tight embrace. Amidst her tears, she cried, "Qi, remember that we are all eagerly awaiting your safe return. Take care of yourself and come back home unharmed." Chapter 843, Agreement Undid by Bexenville. Xiaomicron M. Zioki's eyes lit up with joy upon hearing his parents' agreement. "Mom, Daddy, you agree?" Ms. Fong and eldest uncle couldn't help but feel a pang of bitterness as they witnessed their son's elation upon receiving their approval. They realized that Qi truly desired to join the army, and it wouldn't be fair to confine him at home. They had to let him pursue his aspirations. "Yes, we did. Just remember to stay safe and come back unharmed," eldest uncle affirmed. A tinge of sadness crept into Shao Zioki's expression. He nodded earnestly. "Mom, Dad, don't worry. I will take care of myself and return home safe and sound." Okay. That's good to hear," Ms. Fong replied, her voice filled with a mixture of relief and concern. She shared a few more words of advice and encouragement with Qi, who accepted them all. Ms. Fong felt a sense of relief after receiving consolation from Shao Yunduan and Xiao Xian. Shao Samlang and Shao Dalong were taken aback by their fifth brother's support for Qi. They hadn't expected him to side with Qi in this matter. As they contemplated Qi leaving for the army in February, a sense of sadness washed over them. If their fifth brother believed that Qi would be fine, they took solace in the notion that he would ensure Qi's safety. However, a lingering worry remained. What if something were to happen? When would Qi return to visit them after this? Would it be several more years? The thought of a prolonged separation only deepened their sorrow. The entire village was in a state of chaos due to the recruitment process. The land officer had announced that anyone interested in joining the army could freely apply. However, it was widely understood that only the foolish would willingly step forward. As a result, they resorted to drawing lots. Those selected through the drawing would be obligated to join the army on behalf of the village. It was seen as a fair approach. However, to everyone's surprise, the first section of the Shao family decided to volunteer without waiting for the drawing. Qi was enlisting in the army. The news sent shockwaves throughout the village. The villagers had assumed that the first section of the Shao family would be exempt from the drawing process. After all, Shao Yunduan held a prestigious position as a recommended man, bringing honor to the clan and sparing them from any troubles within the village. Moreover, the first section of the Shao family had already made significant contributions, donating vast stretches of land and funds for the school. These acts of generosity had earned them a level of respect and exemption from the drawing. However, those who voiced their dissent were expected to make their own contributions in the form of donations towards the fields and school before they were allowed to express their opinions. They had made such significant contributions to the village, and it was only fitting that they received certain privileges in return. That was what they rightfully deserved. However, Qi had volunteered. What on earth is the Shao family thinking? This is outrageous. Yes, how could they allow Qi to do this? It's not a laughing matter. I wouldn't have let him do it if I were them. Do you think that recommended man, Shao, has some insider information that could benefit them from the recruitment? You think they're after personal gains? No, certainly not. Despite the confusion and speculation, the matter had been settled. The Shao family breathed a collective sigh of relief and celebrated. Ms.Zhang also felt relieved. She couldn't help but express her gratitude to Qi. She believed he was capable enough to ensure his own safety. If her husband had been selected through the drawing of lots, it would have been a dreadful situation. Ms. Niu and second uncle shared the same sentiment. They finally felt a sense of relief when Qi volunteered, knowing that their own son was spared from being chosen. Ms. Zhang's hands clenched tightly, her head lowered, and a coldness emanated from her eyes. Her lips twitched with disdain. She despised seeing Ms. Yin showering their parents with flattery like this. The first section of the family had never treated her well or helped her attain any form of prosperity. The most they had done for her was share some food. Yet, she still visited them whenever she found the time, seemingly content. Chapter 844, Settlement Udid by Bexenville. Siamakronim, shame on her. Shao Xiaoqi had decided to join the army? Something must be wrong with his head. The entire first section of the family was nothing but a bunch of fools. Well then, let him join the army and never return. Ms.Zhang cursed silently within herself. If it weren't for the first section of the family's coldness and meddling, she would not have ended up in this miserable state. None of the Ding family members were willing to step forward. Consequently, they had to resort to drawing lots. Only the family's sole child would be exempt from this process, while the rest would be included. In the end, it was Ding Jia's youngest son, Ding Jinshan, who was selected. Ding Jinshan and the entire family were in tears. The others, who felt a mix of relief and sadness, approached them to offer their condolences. And so, the matter was settled. They would gather in the middle of February at the county and proceed to the province according to the government's arrangements. From there, they would head north. It remained uncertain which general would oversee them once they reached the northern region. Normally, this journey would take 5 years. The next day, Ding Jiaju and Ms. Yang visited the first section of the Shao family with their son. They believed that they were in the same situation and should foster a friendship together. As soon as Ms. Yang saw Ms. Fong, she burst into tears and clutched Ms. Fang's hands. "Sister-in-law, why are we so unlucky? Our poor child." Ms. Fang's expression changed, and she became displeased. She withdrew her hands and forced a smile. "Stop crying. Our sons will be fine. Perhaps they will return as officials, bringing us great honor, right?" Ms. Fong didn't actually expect Qi to become an official. She simply wanted her son to return home safely. But Ms. Yang's words seemed to carry a sense of bad luck, and she was trying to counteract that with her own optimistic remark. Ms. Yang realized that she had misspoken, feeling a bit embarrassed. However, her eyes suddenly brightened. She exclaimed, "Oh, you're right. Recommended man Shao is on his way to becoming an official. Isn't he? He will take care of Qi, won't he? Let's ask him to take care of our son, too. Jinshan, come and plead with recommended man Shao." Ding Jiaju quickly grasped the opportunity and pushed his son forward, saying, "Yes, sister-in-law, we are all family. Please, recommended man Shao. You have to take care of us." Ms. Fong felt a sense of disgust rising within her. "Uncle Ding and Aunt Yang, you've misunderstood me. I still have the spring examination next year, and it's uncertain if I will even achieve the status of an advanced scholar. Even if I do, I won't be relocated to the north as an official. When they join the army, they must rely on themselves, practice diligently, and take good care of themselves. I won't be able to assist them." Ding Jiaju wasn't entirely convinced. "Really? Then why did you allow Qi to join the army? You must believe it's a good opportunity." Qi couldn't tolerate that. "Uncle Ding, it was my own decision to seek a broader world." Ding Jiaju responded curtly, still skeptical. "Seeking a broader world? One excuse. This journey is fraught with danger." Ms. Yang chimed in. "Regardless, you two are the closest friends and family there. You must take care of each other. Qi, you have skills like archery. My son, on the other hand, is helpless, so you must watch over him." Chapter 845, Annoyed Udid by Bexenville. Siamakron and Ms. Fong and the others remained silent, processing Ms. Yang's words. Without the final sentence, Ms. Yang's remarks seemed acceptable. However, the last comment struck a nerve. Qi smiled reassuringly. "Don't worry, we'll support each other." "Good, that's good." Ding Jiaju and Ms. Yang continued to nag for a while longer before departing with gloomy expressions. Ding Jinshan was still unmarried, which concerned Ms. Yang. She relentlessly searched for potential suitors for her son, hoping to secure a marriage and secure a bloodline in case Ding Jinshan faced an untimely demise. However, no respectable families were willing to accept them as in-laws in the current circumstances, unless they were previously engaged and had to expedite the wedding. Ultimately, They had to spend a considerable amount of money to arrange a wedding with a modest girl during the New Year festivities. As for the first branch of the Shao family, fewer suitors approached them for marriage alliances, and the overall quality of prospects was significantly lower. Prominent families were reluctant to marry off their daughters at this time, regardless of the Shao family standing. However, impoverished families saw it as a golden opportunity to secure a marriage. Previously, they had never considered the Shao family, deeming them too prestigious. But the situation had changed. Shao Xiaoqi would soon be joining the army, with uncertainty regarding his return from the battlefield. Consequently, respectable families were unwilling to form a marital union, leaving an opening for families of lesser standing. The Shao family grew increasingly anxious to find a suitable bride for Shao Xiaoqi, ensuring the continuation of their bloodline. NIS. Fang was infuriated. She became so angry that she forcefully expelled the matchmaker who had brought a gambler's daughter as a potential bride for Qi. Ms. Fang snapped, declaring that Qi was not getting married and that they had not been consulted about the matter. Her outburst was seen as irrational by some elderly men from the clan. They suggested that if something were to happen to Qi, at least he could have a child to carry on the family line. Ms. Fang felt a pang in her heart, but eldest uncle found the suggestion reasonable. He added his own input, which sparked a heated argument with Ms. Fang. The other family members intervened to stop the fight, and Qi himself expressed that he did not feel the need to get married at the moment. The whole issue was eventually dropped. However, rumors began circulating about Ms. Fang. Some even claimed that she was possessed and intentionally mistreated her youngest son. Qi paid no attention to the rumors. He remained happy and content, spending most of his time hunting in the mountains. This allowed him to hone his archery skills and physical prowess. Occasionally, family members like Qiao would accompany him to gather resources from the mountains, but Qi often ventured alone. Qi even extended an invitation to Ding Jinshan to join him for practice. He offered to teach him archery and share some valuable tips, although he kept the teachings from his master to himself. However, Ding Jinshan showed no interest in going, and his parents forbade him from doing so. "It's too cold in the mountains, and there are wild animals too. It's too dangerous," his parents protested. "What's the point of practicing now? You have plenty of time to train in the military camp. It's better to rest at home," they insisted. Chapter 846, Grownup Uttered by Bexenville. Siamacron M. Qi was at a loss for words, unable to express his thoughts further. He had exerted great effort to assist Ding Jinshan, but it appeared that his fellow villager was resistant to his help. This distressed Qi, as he realized that Ding Jinshan's negative attitude could cause problems once they arrived at the military camp. Qi felt a tinge of embarrassment, unsure of how to handle the situation. In his desperation, he turned to his fifth brother, Shao Yunduan, seeking guidance. Shao Yunduan felt a sense of satisfaction, recognizing that Qi had matured and was no longer a child. However, instead of directly providing him with an answer, Shao Yunduan chose to steer Qi towards finding his own solution. He wanted Qi to think for himself and arrive at a decision independently. After some contemplation, Qi came to a conclusion. The following day, Shao Yunduan spoke. "Once we are both at the military camp, one will take care of Ding Jinshan to the best of my abilities. One will talk to him and assist him as long as I can. However, I won't allow him to become a burden to me. My parents, as well as you, my brothers and sisters, hold greater importance in my life. Ding Jinshan is merely a neighboring villager, and I will inform him of his responsibilities. If he chooses not to listen, then our relationship ends there." Shao Yunduan nodded approvingly, wearing a smile. "You're absolutely right. Do your best, but leave the rest to fate. There will be no reason for you to feel regretful. I have entrusted Manager Qin with the task of writing a letter to young Master Xie, requesting him to lend us some military books. Read them and prepare yourself." Shao Xiaoqi felt a slight pang of surprise. He wasn't particularly fond of reading, but since this idea came from his fifth brother, he knew he had to support it. Reluctantly, he nodded and said, "Fine, I will read the books and seek your guidance if I come across anything one don't understand. Shao Yinhua nodded, his smile growing wider. Although Qi had never been fond of reading, Shao Yinhua believed that he could teach him to read well enough to understand the military books. And that was sufficient for Qi's purpose. As the year drew to a close, Ding Jinshan got married. The Shao family refrained from hosting a grand wedding. But as they contemplated Qi's departure, their initial happiness diminished, and they began to dote on Qi. Qi, however, failed to notice any difference. While he missed his home, the anticipation of his upcoming journey and the possibilities it held motivated him greatly. During their journey, Qi once again successfully hunted a wild boar, this time weighing a whopping 150 kilograms. Dozens of people came together to collect the wild boar. Qi and the other villagers had encountered wild boars before, but none as massive as this one. The wild boar was so large that it formed a small mound in the yard. Word spread, attracting many visitors to the village who came to witness the spectacle. They marveled at the long, sharp fangs and the thick, black mane resembling steel needles, finding them intimidating to behold. Yet it was Qi alone who had managed to bring down this formidable beast. Naturally, the villagers praised his archery skills. Qi is truly remarkable with his arrows. Qi's abilities are astounding. This beast leaves me in awe. No wonder his family is thrilled to have him join the army. He's destined for greatness. You're absolutely right. People began to comprehend the underlying reasons behind Qi's family's support for his decision. Ms. Fong sighed, feeling a mix of emotions. She couldn't help but worry. Her child had grown up and formed his own ideas. As his mother, she couldn't simply take control of everything anymore. Chapter 847, Mute Uded by Bexenville. Siamacronim, the most amusing aspect was that Ding Jinshan's family, upon witnessing the wild boar and Qi's consistent success in bringing home prey each year, found themselves reinvigorated with motivation. Ding Jinshan approached Qi, inviting him to accompany him on a mountain trip and beseeching him to impart his archery skills. Qi accepted the request. However, after merely 3 days, Ding Jinshan relinquished his pursuit. He lacked experience and struggled to locate any targets. When Qi spotted an animal and instructed him to shoot, Ding Jinshan lacked the strength to draw the bowstring. The substantial wild boar was shared among those who assisted in carrying it, as well as the second and third sections of the family. A generous portion was utilized to prepare a variety of dishes to be shared with the neighbors. Nevertheless, there remained over 100 kilograms of meat. Given the surplus smoked meat and sausages this year, there was no need to produce additional supplies. Instead, they could offer them as gifts during the New Year festivities, either before or after. Ms. Fong suggested to Ms. Su that they deliver the excess meat to her family as a gift. Fortunately, Ms. Su readily agreed. Consequently, the next day, both Ms. Fong and Ms. Su returned to their respective families. Each family received 15 kilograms of wild boar meat, along with a few other items. The quantity was quite substantial. Having developed a strong bond and cooperation, the first section of the family and NIS, Yin decided to present Ms. Yan's family with 10 kilograms of the meat as a gift, as they maintained a good relationship and collaborated on various business ventures. After a brief discussion, Qiao Xian decided to share some of the wild boar meat with Manager Qin and Ding Erju from Zhang Village. Later, she took a moment to scoop some shrimp from the pond after inspecting the fields at Zhang Village. Qiao Xian had no inclination to offer any gifts to the Qiao family. Likewise, Officer Qiao had no desire to receive any. Since Yang Xiaoni had severed ties with Yang Liang, she felt no obligation to bring any presents for the new year. Her focus was on having Shao Sanlang accompany her to visit her parents' tomb and pay respects. Someone happened to discover that the first section of the family had given Ms. Yin additional wild boar meat. This news left her feeling bitter and resentful. Attempting to embarrass Ms. Yin, she put on a fake smile and spoke about it openly. Ms. Yin was taken aback by the sudden revelation. Ms. Niu, equally surprised, inquired, "Ms. Yin, is your second sister-in-law telling the truth?" Ms. Yin, while inwardly sneering, openly admitted, "Yes, it's true. Elder Aunt mentioned that my parents should also have taste of it." Fourth sister-in-law, "You certainly have your admirers, don't you?" Ms. Zhang sneered. "Even our mother doesn't receive such honors." Ms. Yin responded quietly but firmly, "I'm not certain about that, but I often present Elder Aunt and her family with tofu, yubas, and dried tofu. It seems that Elder Aunt feels the need to reciprocate." Ms. Zhang's words trailed off as Ms. Niu, who was on the verge of anger, fell silent. Indeed, Shao Silang often brought home tofu and yuba from work, much to Ms. Niu's delight. However, Shao Silang consistently emphasized that his in-laws insisted on sharing some with the first section of the family and some with the third section of the family. While Ms. Niu disliked the idea of sharing, she couldn't covertly claim them for herself when the Yin family emphasized the first section's entitlement. Ultimately, when she already received her share, Ms. Niu decided to let go of her argument. So when the Yin family received wild boar meat from the first section of the family and requested her daughter-in-law to bring it over, what else could she say? Could she prevent her daughter-in-law from fulfilling her duties? After all, it belonged to her in-laws. Ms. Yin didn't deliberately hide anything from her. Moreover, both of her sons were employed at the Yin family's workshop. While anger brewed within Ms. Niu, she glared at Ms. Zhang and retorted, "Focus on your own meal. You keep causing trouble without knowing the full story. What are you trying to achieve?" Chapter 848. Ms. Zhang's plan uttered by Bexenville. Siamacron Ms. Zhang trembled with anger, her face flushed. Yet, she lowered her head and refrained from uttering a word. Still, her anger burned within her as she cursed Ms. Yin for being sneaky and her mother-in-law for being foolish enough to trust Ms. Yan's flattering words so easily. In her view, Ms. Yin constantly flattered the first section of the family, which resulted in them showering her with treats. However, they never extended such favors to her, making her feel utterly unfairly treated. Ms. Zhang seethed with anger. With the new year approaching and the first section of the family already distributing gifts to the in-laws, she wondered what her mother-in-law's plan was. Reluctant to ask directly, she privately vented her frustrations to her husband. Shao Erlang held disdain for the Zhang family, feeling repulsed by them. Nevertheless, he acknowledged Ms. Zhang's valid point. They should present gifts to their own family during the new year. Otherwise, it would be seen as mistreatment of the daughter-in-law, causing her great humiliation. Shao Erlang mustered the courage to propose the idea to Ms. Niu. However, before he could complete his suggestion, Ms. Niu snapped, "She instructed you to ask me, didn't she? What is she thinking? Gifts for the new year? Absolutely not. Tell her to leave. It's out of the question. Tell her she can either live honestly or leave this family." Shao Erlang panicked, attempting to defend Ms. Zhang, but even his own words sounded unreasonable to his ears. Ultimately, he was scolded by his mother, failing to protect his wife. Ms. Zhang cried, overcome by a mix of sadness and anger. Weren't they supposed to forgive her for what had happened? It was all a lie. No one had forgotten that incident or truly forgiven her. She could sense that her husband still harbored resentment against her whenever the incident was brought up. But it wasn't her fault. Not at all. They were at fault too. Ms. Zhang no longer dared to mention the gifts to her mother, which filled her with guilt. However, Ms. Niu kept her away from anything valuable, and she couldn't even sneak anything out. Out of pity, Shao Erlang managed to give her some extra money. But it was so little, merely 3 qian, barely enough for anything. While Shao Erlang earned a decent income each month, Ms. Niu never shared any money with her. The thought of that irritated Ms. Zhang even more. She believed that since her husband earned the money, she deserved to receive 1/3 of his earnings. Wasn't that how it worked with the first section of the family? They put half of what they earned into shared savings and kept the other half. Frustrated and enraged, she conceived an idea when she overheard Ms. Niu discussing Shao Miling's upcoming marriage. It was said that Shao Miling's fiancée would visit in a few days. Ms. Zhang contemplated causing some trouble. She had done it before and was already disliked. If her plan failed, she would be doomed. Ms. Niu would never forgive her again, and that wretched Ms. Yin would only add fuel to the fire. Yet, every time she saw Ms. Niu, Ms. Yin, and the first section of the family, Ms. Zhang couldn't control her anger. Her heart burned with fiery hatred. It was a wretched and miserable feeling. She couldn't sleep, tormented day and night. After contemplating for a while and refining her plan repeatedly, Ms. Zhang finally decided to set her scheme in motion. She found her excuses and explanations prepared, ready to ignite the trouble she had in mind. Chapter 849, Not Deserving Uded by Bexenville. Siamacronim on that day, Ms. Zhang intercepted Shao Miling when she was in a good mood and casually mentioned her fiancé's upcoming visit before the new year. Shao Miling blushed upon hearing Yu Xiaomao's name. Ms. Zhang sneered inwardly but sighed dramatically. "I've heard about the Yu family. Such a pity." Shao Miling grew slightly furious, staring at Ms. Zhang. "What do you mean?" Ms. Zhang responded. "It's quite obvious. Shao Yunduan has become a provincial champion, soon to become an advanced scholar and an official. His father-in-law already holds a government position. He's destined for a promising future. You're his cousin, but you come from a different background. Now your two brothers are making money, and your life is going to improve. However, you got engaged too early. If you had started seeking a suitor now, you might have had many suitors vying for your attention. Look at your elder aunt. She's so clever that she hasn't even engaged Taotao yet. She wants to wait until Shao Yunduan becomes an advanced scholar and find her suitor, perhaps someone from a wealthy family. She's quite calculating, isn't she? But she's Taotao's mother, after all. It's understandable that she's looking out for Taotao's best interests. However, you're also a daughter of the Shao family, and she does nothing to help you. She even allows your mother to get you engaged so early because she has her own motives, maybe even something sinister, I believe." Shao Miling bit her lip, growing pale, suddenly overwhelmed by jealousy. She had never been fond of Taotao, yet she was going to marry someone of nobility because of her brother. Perhaps she would become the wife of a young master, leading a carefree life. But what about her? She was marrying into an ordinary farmer's family. She would have to work for the household and labor in the fields. Despite her hard work, she would only receive meager income for the rest of her life. Why, her second sister-in-law had a point. She deserved a better family. Her cousin would become an official next year, while she would be the cousin of an official coming from such different circumstances. How could an ordinary farmer's family be sufficient for her? She had to admit that she wasn't as exceptional as Taotao, but couldn't she at least marry into a wealthy landlord's family? Shao Miling sneered. "Why didn't you say this earlier, second sister-in-law? What's the point of mentioning it now?" They were already engaged. Shao Miling felt even more miserable. "Nis." Zhang let out a slight sneer. She continued, "Miling, it's never too late. You're not married yet, right? You can even break off the engagement. The Yu family doesn't deserve you. You have to think about it and avoid ruining yourself." Shao Miling hesitated. Breaking off an engagement could tarnish a girl's reputation, and she was well aware of that. "Nis." Zhang seemed to have sensed her concerns and wore a knowing smile. "Once Shao Yunduan becomes an official, you'll become the cousin of an official with a respectable family background. You'll stand out from other girls whose engagements are broken. When that time comes, no one will blame you for this stain. They'll flock to your door, begging for the chance to court you." Shao Miling's spirits were lifted upon hearing this. Yes, she would indeed be different from other girls whose engagements were broken. The Yu family didn't deserve her, and she was determined to break off the engagement with them. Only foolish people would reject such a well-thought-out plan. She refused to lead a life filled with humiliation and poverty. Chapter 850, Regretful Uded by Bexenville. Siamacronim translator. Henyi translations. More importantly, she refused to live in the shadow of Shao Taotao for the rest of her life. She might not have the advantage of having an official brother like Shao Taotao, which was beyond her control. However, she couldn't accept being significantly inferior to Shao Taotao. Couldn't she at least enjoy the leftovers from Taotao's rich meat soup? She simply couldn't settle for rough food when she had the chance for something better. Seeing Shao Miling's apparent interest, Ms. Zhang felt a sense of satisfaction. She continued to flatter Shao Miling, who slowly began to believe that she truly deserved someone better. However, Ms. Zhang soon urged Shao Miling to keep their conversation a secret. You know, I've made some foolish mistakes in the past, and my mother-in-law despises me. If she finds out that I shared this solution with you, she would reject it no matter what. It wouldn't be in your best interest, would it? Shao Miling instantly gave Ms. Zhang a disdainful look upon hearing her confession. She snorted. Of course not. I want nothing to do with you. Being associated with Ms. Zhang would only bring her misfortune. Ms. Zhang felt a surge of annoyance, but she quickly forced an embarrassed smile. You're right, sister. That's how it should be. I understand. Ms. Zhang sneered inwardly. The Yu family would certainly not break off the engagement. Only fools did that. She eagerly anticipated the unfolding drama. If it didn't allow her to live a peaceful life, she wouldn't let them have one either. As expected, Shao Miling went to Ms. Niu and tearfully announced that she no longer wanted to marry into the Yu family. She cried and vented her grievances. Then, Shao Miling revealed to Ms. Niu what she had learned from Ms. Zhang, leaving Ms. Niu filled with regret and hesitation. If only she had known that Shao Yinduan would become the provincial champion, she wouldn't have rushed to find a suitor for Shao Miling so soon. Once Shao Yinduan achieved the title of advanced scholar and obtained an official position, there would surely be numerous better families for them to consider. Nis. Niu felt a deep sense of regret as these thoughts consumed her. She began to question whether the Yu family was truly suitable for them. She also expressed her grievances toward the first section of the family. The first section of the family should have known about Shao Yunduan's talent and potential to become a recommended candidate. Yet, Ms. Fong remained silent. How terrible! And as for their elder brother, all he did was talk without taking any action. He failed to provide them with any updates or information, nearly jeopardizing Miling's future. Nis. Niu pondered over the situation repeatedly, feeling confused and troubled. Eventually, she sought out her second uncle and asked for his advice. Second uncle blamed her, stating that the engagement had already been arranged and the wedding was scheduled to take place shortly after the new year, or at the latest, by the end of the following year. Breaking off the engagement so easily would tarnish their daughter's reputation. However, second uncle fell silent after hearing Ms. Niu's analysis. After some contemplation, he responded, breaking off the engagement doesn't seem like an easy task. The Yu family is eager to become our in-laws, and they are unlikely to agree to it. Ms. Niu grew increasingly frustrated. Yu Xiaomiao is no longer worthy of being our daughter's spouse. It shouldn't be up to them whether they want to continue or not. We can offer them some money to end the engagement. Although typically frugal with money, Ms. Niu believed that securing a better marital prospect for her daughter was worth the expense. Convinced, second uncle agreed, saying, all right then, find a trustworthy person who can negotiate with the Yu family regarding the cancellation of the engagement. Just state that the bride and groom's horoscopes do not align, and it is best to call it off. That sounds reasonable. And what about the money? Second uncle hesitated when it came to reimbursing the money they had received. How about 5 liang? Or perhaps 10? No, 8 liang should suffice. Chapter 851. The Yu family's fury udded by Bexenville. CM 8 liang was already a significant amount for them. Many families struggled to save even 8 liang within a year. Ms. Niu nodded in agreement. It would be wise for them to act sooner rather than later. The next day, Ms. Niu hurriedly set out to find a matchmaker. Ms. Zhang observed her actions and had a vague understanding of her intentions. She silently sneered. The matchmaker had already profited from Ms. Niu and decided to accompany her on the visit, although she found the entire situation ridiculous. As expected, the Yu family reacted with anger. What are they talking about? Are they joking with us? We've exchanged birth dates, and everything matches. They simply don't think we're good enough for them. We won't tolerate being bullied like this. There's no way we're breaking off the engagement. Or I can share this story with others and gauge their opinions. Absolutely. It's non-negotiable. The Yu family was delighted to learn that Shao Yunduan had become a provincial champion. Although Shao Miling was not Shao Yunduan's sister, she was his cousin. After all, if they encountered any difficulties and sought his help, he would never turn them down. Moreover, the martial alliance would greatly benefit their family's reputation. The Yin family also had a prosperous workshop. By establishing a martial connection between the two families, the Yu family might even secure employment at the Yin family's workshop, earning 1 or 2 liang per month for easy work. What a fantastic opportunity. Additionally, the Shao family had established a school in Shouting Village, and their children could attend classes there without paying tuition fees. These were all advantages of the martial alliance. Only foolish individuals would forfeit such an opportunity. In a surprising turn of events, the Shao family decided to call off the engagement, seemingly due to a sudden lack of confidence. But the Yu family was determined not to let that happen. It was an incredibly humiliating situation. The matchmaker, recognizing the unreasonableness of the Yu family, quietly slipped away instead of engaging in an argument. Blamed and scolded by the Yu family, the matchmaker felt irritated. When passing on the message to Ms. Niu, she added some inflammatory remarks, further fueling the fire. Ms. Niu was also seething with anger. She slammed her hand on the table and cursed. What a foolish family. Unreasonable people. We will never marry Miling into their household. She would only suffer. We refuse to proceed. Ms. Niu appeared to have found a justifiable excuse to continue with her decision. Taking matters into her own hands, she personally went to the Yu family. Ms. Niu hurled vulgar words at them. Even when she offered to repay them with 10 liang, they engaged in a heated argument that eventually led to a complete dissolution of the engagement. The Yu family was the aggrieved party, but they feared that if Ms. Niu sought help from the esteemed Shao, they would be powerless to intervene. To gain sympathy and support, they shared their ordeal with others. The Shao family's arrogance knew no bounds. Such bullying was unprecedented in their eyes. After they had already exchanged birth dates, they suddenly decided to call off the engagement. The news of this development quickly spread throughout Shouting Village, reaching every household. Ms. Fong expressed her disbelief, cursing, "What has gotten into these two? How could they act so unethically? They don't seem to care about the reputation of either the Yu family or their own daughter." Qiao Xian let out a sigh, sharing the sentiment. No respectable family would be willing to establish a marital connection with them now, given their reputation for snobbishness. Even if there were wealthy families interested in marrying Shao Miling, she might end up as a concubine or face bullying after the marriage, considering the circumstances. Chapter 852, Saving People Udded by Bexenville. CM Translator. Henyi translations indeed. The intricacies of a marriage are often invisible to those outside of it. Only the couple themselves truly understand what goes on within their relationship. Each person must live their own life, making choices that are best for them. In light of these events, Ms. Fang's concern for Taotao grew. Xiao Xian reassured her with a smile. "Don't worry, Mom. We come from different sections of the family. If anyone assumes we are the same, we don't need to consider such a suitor. Trust me, Taotao will surely marry a good man." Ms. Fang found some solace in these words. However, Ms. Niu did not anticipate that the Yu family would spread the news, causing her immense anger. She vented her frustration through vehement curses at home. Shao Miling was consumed by anger, constantly shedding tears within the confines of her home. Ms. Niu and second uncle sought help from Ms. Fang and elder uncle. "Brother, sister-in-law, you must help us." Ms. Niu's tearful plea only fueled Ms. Fang's fury. "What right do you have to cry? This is all your own fault. If you didn't want to go through with the marriage, you shouldn't have arranged it in the first place. No one forced you into this. You exchanged birth dates and even set a wedding date. And now you break it off? It's highly unethical. The Yu family is a good family that has been humiliated. Of course, they're upset. Wouldn't you be upset in their position? Well, they didn't want to, but it's all your fault. Ms. Neo snapped at Ms. Fong. If you had informed us that Yunduan would achieve such success, we wouldn't have arranged a marriage for Miling. But you purposely concealed the truth, and you don't even want Taotao to find a suitor. You must have done that intentionally. Ms. Fong was infuriated by these accusations. Whether Yunduan would become a recommended man was uncertain for everyone. What nonsense are you spouting? It's utterly ridiculous. And I haven't found a suitor for Taotao because I don't think she should get married right now. How is that even relevant? Any more nonsense like this, and I'll slap it right across your face. Ms. Neo's eyes widened, clearly unconvinced, but she chose not to engage in further argument. Times had changed. After Shao Yunduan became the provincial champion, the second branch of the family was no longer as confrontational as before. They might still be bothersome, but not as forceful. However, second uncle chimed in. Elder sister-in-law, let it go. It's already over. But you must help Miling, or her life will be ruined. Yes, that's exactly what one mean. The Yu family is nothing but bullies. They're spreading these stories just to tarnish Miling's reputation. They were never a suitable match anyway. Absolutely true. Seeing the couple agree with each other in a reasonable manner, Ms. Fong was too exhausted to make any further complaints. The room fell into a heavy silence. Even eldest uncle, who had always held his brothers in high regard, was visibly flushed with anger. Clearly, the blame rested with the second branch of the family. Ms. Fong regarded them with disdain. So, your daughter is the only one with a reputation to protect? What about their son? You exchanged birth dates, and the wedding date was about to be finalized. And now, you want to break off the engagement? How can that be considered reasonable? Furthermore, they seem to be expecting Shao Yunduan to come to their defense, as if he held some influence. Ms. Fong retorted, you initiated the engagement, so it's your responsibility. You have to resolve the matter with the Yu family yourselves. We can't be of any assistance. And neither can Yunduan. What do you expect from him? To use his position to bully the weak? He would never engage in such unethical behavior. Chapter 853. Unethical Uded by Bexenville. CM eldest uncle felt a sense of pity for Shao Miling, unaware that Ms.Zhang had influenced her with the idea. He had intended to interject, but halted upon hearing Ms. Fang's words. It was clear that this couple had come to their doorstep, not seeking the help of ordinary people like him and Ms. Fong, but rather aiming for Yunduan's assistance. As he contemplated this, eldest uncle grew increasingly uneasy, realizing that they were trying to manipulate Yunduan into using his limited authority to retaliate against the other family. This deeply troubled him. Such behavior was unquestionably unethical. That's not what we mean. Second uncle and Ms. Neo didn't dare to admit it. This marriage isn't a good match, and we have every right to call it off. We even offered to pay them back 10 liang, but they still refused to let go. Now, the whole situation has become public, and Miling will suffer greatly if she marries into that family. Elder brother, elder sister-in-law, you've seen Miling grow up. You can't just abandon her like this, can you? Ms. Fong sneered. But you are the ones who created this mess. It's utterly unreasonable to expect us to take over and clean it up. Elder uncle carefully pondered the situation before speaking up. Ms. Fong, let's calm ourselves down. There's no use complaining when things have already reached this point. We need to come up with a solution to prevent Miling's life from being ruined. True, elder brother is right. NIS. Neo and second uncle nodded in agreement. Ms. Fong sneered inwardly, convinced that Miling's life was already in ruins. If only Miling had the capacity to comprehend it, she would have despised her parents for their actions. Ms. Fong chimed in. What if Ms. Qiao and I accompany you to the Yu family and help you reconcile, so that the two families can reunite? No, that wouldn't work. Why not? Miling will be subjected to bullying in such a situation. Then let the Yu family make a promise. Yunduan should be able to help you. We can all live in peace, and if anyone bullies Miling and the news reaches us, we won't forgive them for it. Elder uncle's eyes lit up, and he added, I think it's a good idea. Whenever you have the opportunity, ask Miling how she feels about it. We will seek justice for any girls who are bullied, within our family, of course. If Miling faces any mistreatment, Yunduan can step in. What do you think, brother and sister-in-law? I believe it's a reasonable solution. The Yu family isn't foolish enough to intentionally harm Miling. Ms. Niu and second uncle exchanged a bewildered glance with each other. This wasn't what they had intended. They had wanted to break off the engagement. However, Ms. Fong had already spoken resolutely, and elder uncle had agreed. Shao Yinwan would likely heed his parents' advice as well. Ms. Niu and second uncle gritted their teeth in anger, their words failing them. Elder brother and elder sister-in-law are so heartless. They must have deliberately orchestrated this. They don't want a bright future for Miling. This is all your fault. Why did you rush into making a decision about Miling's engagement? Damn you. Miling is no longer a child. She's old enough to have suitors. I had no idea that Yunduan would become a provincial champion or hold an official position. If I had known, one would have called off the engagement. It's all because of elder sister-in-law concealing everything from us. Chapter 854, Braver Udid by Bexenville. Siam is Niu and second uncle sighed repeatedly, feeling distressed and helpless. Shao Miling, on the other hand, was seething with anger and disappointment upon hearing the outcome. She cried incessantly and threw tantrums, declaring that she would rather die than marry into the Yu family. She couldn't bear to see Shao Taotao living a better life than her. NIS. Niu and second uncle were somewhat swayed by their daughter's intense reaction. Their already negative opinion of the marriage worsened as they witnessed her emotional turmoil. But if the first section of the family refused to offer any assistance, what options did they have? The couple frowned, constantly mulling over the dire situation. Meanwhile, Ms.Zhang couldn't help but sneer inwardly, reveling in the chaos that had befallen the family, thanks to her cunning manipulation. Feeling a surge of arrogance, she concluded that her mother-in-law's family was utterly foolish, oblivious to being deceived. Encouraged by her perceived superiority, Ms. Zhang grew bolder and conceived another idea. The Yu family doesn't want to break off the engagement because they see our family as promising, hoping to gain benefits from us. But you are fifth cousin's cousin, and Taotao is his real sister. If he could marry Taotao, I believe the Yu family would gladly accept. What are you implying? Do you think I'm inferior to Taotao? Shao Miling snapped. Ms. Zhang said, absolutely not. You've misunderstood me. One believe you are far superior to Taotao. What I meant was that the Yu family would see marrying Taotao as a more advantageous arrangement for them, as they could benefit more from it. Shao Miling snorted, clearly displeased with the situation. However, she reluctantly admitted that Ms. Zhang's assessment had some truth to it. But don't mock us any further. Elder Aunt would never allow Taotao to marry into the Yu family. They aren't that kind-hearted. They would never allow Taotao to replace her as the bride. She had never even entertained the thought. A sinister smile crept across Ms. Zhang's face as she sneered. But what if that man from the Yu family forces something upon Taotao, and Taotao has no choice but to marry him? Shao Miling was taken aback, her eyes widening with curiosity. Tell me more. Ms. Zhang spoke in a mysterious tone. Yu Xiaomiao is coming here to bring us gifts, right? Let's gather the first section of the family and the third section of the family for a dinner. And when they have some drinks, Shao Miling was surprised, a newfound understanding dawning upon her. I see. Enlighten me further. That seemed like a viable solution. Since the first section of the family had refused to help them and had effectively ruined her life, Shao Miling felt no remorse towards them. She warned Ms. Zhang, never speak a word about this to anyone ever. Shao Miling understood that it was not an honorable plan to be proud of, and it should remain a secret. Ms. Zhang agreed, knowing that discretion was crucial. Shao Miling approached Ms. Niu with a sense of satisfaction, her confidence bolstered. Ms. Niu was taken aback upon hearing Shao Miling's idea. But as she contemplated the situation, she realized something profound. It was a brilliant idea. Wasn't it too harsh on Taotao? Well, Ms. Fong had been cruel to them first, and they were merely reciprocating. The first section of the family had started it, and now the second section of the family would return the favor. Since Ms. Fong had believed that the Yu family was a suitable match, why not have Taotao marry into the Yu family? It would be a perfect fit, wouldn't it? Ms. Niu pondered over the idea, considering the best course of action. They needed a well-thought-out plan to ensure they wouldn't be caught by the first section of the family. Every detail had to be carefully executed, leaving no traces behind. Furthermore, they needed to establish a cooperative relationship with the Yu family, ensuring that Yu Xiaomiao would be on board with their plan. Ms. Niu had no doubts about the outcome. The Yu family would not be foolish enough to reject a marriage proposal for Shao Yunduan's younger sister. Chapter 855. The Invitation Uded by Bexenville. The first section of the family had expected the second section of the family to continue making a fuss about the situation, but to their surprise, it abruptly stopped. They let out a collective sigh of relief, grateful for the respite. Ms. Fong voiced her opinion. I'll think that they must have realized that it is an unreasonable thing, and we want help them. Indeed, it seemed that the second section of the family had come to the same conclusion. Ms. Niu and second uncle approached the first section of the family once again, wearing guilty expressions and suggesting that they could proceed with marrying Shao miling off to the Yu family instead. Recognizing that they were all part of the same family, the first section of the family agreed readily, promising to support them if the Yu family were to mistreat Shao miling. Feeling reassured, the second section of the family then mentioned that Yu Xiaomiao would deliver the presents in 3 days and invited the entire family to join them for dinner. The purpose was to showcase the unity within the family and to instill some fear in the Yu family, preventing them from seeking revenge. Both Ms. Fong and eldest uncle agreed wholeheartedly. With that, Ms. Niu and second uncle left with happiness in their hearts. Yang Xiaoni couldn't help but wear a smile as she addressed Xiao Xian. Did I misunderstand? Our second aunt-in-law and second uncle inviting the entire family for dinner? I thought it would only be our parents, fifth sister-in-law, and fifth brother. Xiao Xian chuckled, acknowledging that her third sister-in-law had a point. The second section of the family wasn't known for their generosity, so it was unexpected for them to invite the entire family instead of just the key members. Considering the first section of the family had a large number of people, including children, it would certainly be a bustling affair. Xiao Xian jokingly remarked, maybe second aunt-in-law and second uncle are feeling quite guilty and want as many of us as possible to support them when facing the Yu family. The idea sounded plausible to both of them. Yang Xiaoni sighed and nodded in agreement, saying, indeed, Miling is their daughter, and they want to ensure her future happiness. For the sake of their daughter's happiness, attending one dinner was a small price to pay. If it weren't for the intervention of someone from the Yu family approaching Ms. Fong and Shao Yinduan, the first section of the family would have held onto their belief all along. Meanwhile, at the Yu family residence, Ms. Niu made a secret visit to her future in-laws and shared her plan. Mrs. Yu was persuaded and agreed to the arrangement. As long as they executed the plan effectively, it was crucial for Yu Xiaomiao to cooperate. He didn't need to know the details, and he wouldn't face any blame. They were well aware of the advantages that came with marrying the sister of an official. Nobody in the village would dare offend them, and the official would always prioritize the well-being of his sister. While the Yu family wasn't inherently greedy, they wouldn't pass up on such an opportunity for financial gain. Upon receiving the Yu family's assurance, Ms. Niu felt elated. It was an irresistible temptation that no one could refuse. Officials needed to maintain strong connections with other influential families. After Taotao's marriage, Shao Yinduan would no longer have a sister, and he would need to forge a marital alliance with another family. Miling was the most suitable candidate for him to consider. Chapter 856. Disorganization Uded by Bexenville. Maybe Miling could marry into an official's family and become the wife of an official. This idea further fueled Ms. Niu's determination. She was determined to make it happen, no matter what. However, When Mrs. Yu shared the plan with her husband and Yu Xiaomiao, they exchanged a glance and immediately dismissed the idea. You even criticized Mrs. Yu for entertaining such a ridiculous notion. Ms. Nio's idea is preposterous. Why are you even considering it? Provincial champion Shao is a highly intelligent individual who can see through such schemes. Regardless of whether the plan succeeds or not, we would antagonize many people. The second section of the family is his own family, and he wouldn't target them. But we are outsiders. Have you thought about the consequences? Mrs. Yu remained unconvinced. But Shao Taotao will be our daughter-in-law, and we are family as well. The first section of the family wouldn't harm their own daughter. We're not greedy people. We just want to live a decent life. That's all. Yu Xiaomiao sneered. Mom, he is the provincial champion and possesses various means to deal with us. If they seek revenge by ruining our siblings, do you have any control over that? The Yu family could never bear such consequences. Mrs. Yes' expression changed. No, it's impossible. We will be relatives by that time, and they would never stoop so low. Of course they would. Have you not heard what happened to the Zhao family? Mrs. Yu fell silent, her face turning pale. Indeed, she was well aware of the circumstances surrounding the Zhao family. Not everyone was oblivious to the truth. Young Master Zhao had some inkling about the first section of the Shao family's daughter-in-law, and soon after, they mysteriously vanished. People began to connect the dots and realize that there must have been some connection. The downfall of the Zhao family was evident. They deserved punishment, but the extent of the retribution seemed excessive. No one dared to question the Shao family's actions. No one dared to voice their approval either. Mrs. Yu remained stubborn, speaking through gritted teeth. But Taotao will be our daughter-in-law, and if they dare lay a finger on my son and daughter, I will make sure their daughter learns a lesson. It's only fair, as one would be her mother-in-law. Yu Xiaomiao sneered even more, his anger evident in his voice. You're really willing to entertain that thought, Mom? If you retaliate against their daughter, they could take it out on me. They might even divorce us. Provincial champion Shao is on the path to becoming an official, and even if he doesn't, the Shao family has many influential members who would never allow their sister to be mistreated. Mrs. Yu opened her mouth to respond, but found herself at a loss for words. It was true. In reality, she was merely playing with empty threats. She lacked the courage to actually confront anyone. Mr. Yes' glare intensified. Now you realize how wrong you were, don't you? How could you agree to such a plan? I never knew you could be like this. Mrs. Yu felt her heart shatter, but found herself unable to respond. She murmured, but I already made a promise to Ms. Nio. Father and son continued to glare at her, their disappointment evident. She gathered her courage and straightened her back. Why are you glaring at me like that? I'm doing this for Xiaomiao and for the sake of our family. Mr. Yu furrowed his brow, contemplating that once Xiaomiao got married, they should live separately. The two sons should reside in different places. They would live with their eldest son, whose wife would be in charge. Mrs. Yu would have no authority and would simply take care of her grandson and do some household chores. That would be her role. She couldn't be in a position of authority, or it would lead to trouble. Yu Xiaomiao interjected. That's your problem. I'm going to the shouting village to inform the first section of the family about this. Chapter 857. Truth Uttered by Bexenville. CM what? No way. But that's how it should be. We'll be so humiliated. You shouted in anger. You talk about humiliation? Xiaomiao is right. We should inform Provincial Champion Shao about this. It's their family matter, and we shouldn't interfere. We can break off the engagement and demand compensation of no less than 10 liang. Not a penny less. They didn't like the way things had turned out, but it was pointless to continue. They could gain a new daughter-in-law with the compensation. However, Yu Xiaomiao had his own plan. Well, see, Mr. Yu understood his child. He had his own ideas, so he didn't press the matter further. Besides, he didn't want to discuss it any longer. His son could do as he pleased, as long as he didn't blame his parents for it. It was good that he wasn't as confused as his mother, so he didn't go overboard. As evening fell, Yu Xiaomiao went to the first section of his Shao family. Recognizing him, Ms. Fong put on a friendly expression and invited him inside. Ms. Fong felt a twinge of guilt about the humiliation caused by the second section of the family. Yu Xiaomiao mentioned that he had a few private words to speak with provincial champion Shao, which should remain between them. Ms. Fong was puzzled, but she still went to ask Shao Yunduan. Shao Yunduan invited Yu Xiaomiao to join him in the study, where Qiao Xian was already present. As Ms. Fong was about to leave, Yu Xiaomiao smiled at her and gestured for her to stay. It was an awkward and embarrassing situation, and Yu Xiaomiao stumbled over the story. Ms. Fang's anger flared up as she snapped. How dare she? How dare she? She intends to frame Taotao. She's insane. I'll make sure she pays for this. Qiao, she intervened. Mom, don't get worked up. She won't succeed. She should be the one feeling angry, not us. I knew it. How could she suddenly be so generous and invite us all to dinner? She wants to carry out her plan when there are many people present. Qiao Xian began to piece it all together. It had been confusing for them as well. No wonder they say that when rules are broken, something is amiss. Yu Xiaomiao soon finished explaining the story. I apologize for my mother's confusion. My father and I didn't think it was a good idea at all. That's why we decided to inform you about this. Perhaps it's better this way. I'm sorry. Ms. Fang's gratitude toward Yu Xiaomiao grew. She said, We are indebted to you. If not for your revelation, we would have been framed. I apologize and thank you. That's what we should do. All right then, I should be on my way. As it was getting late, Ms. Fong and Shao Yunduan escorted Yu Xiaomiao out. Upon returning to the study, Ms. Fong was seething with anger, wishing she could confront Ms. Neo right away. Yunduan, Qiao Xian, what do you think? Qiao Xian and Shao Yunduan exchanged glances, and after a moment, Shao Yunduan spoke up. We have only heard Yu Xiaomiao's account, and we cannot be certain of the truth. Ms. Fong was taken aback, her brows furrowing. I don't believe he is lying. It's just like something your second aunt-in-law would do. Yu Xiaomiao. That story brought back so many memories for her. Qiao Xian explained with a smile. Mom, my husband means that regardless of our intentions, we shouldn't blindly trust the words of one person. We should investigate and gather more information, or we might easily fall victim to framing. Chapter 858, Waiting Udded by Bexenville. CM Ms. Fong comprehended the message. I'll understand. You're advising me not to act impulsively. She knew Ms. Neo's character, but what if someone else was involved? If she blindly believed that person and acted rashly, she could have made a grave mistake. Things were different now. She may have made mistakes in the past, but what if her son was implicated this time? Qiao Xian smiled. Mom, you're so perceptive. It's just a gentle reminder. Ms. Fong sighed, a smile forming on her face. Then remind me as much as you can. I'll keep them all in mind. Shao Yunduan glanced at Qiao Xian with a tender expression. Having a wife who understood him and stood by his side brought him a happiness he couldn't find elsewhere. After a moment, Ms. Fong clenched her teeth. But I believe this is exactly what your second aunt-in-law would do. Let's catch her in the act, suggested Shao Yunduan. Confronting her now wouldn't yield any admission. We have no evidence. She would likely accuse Yu Xiaomiao of harboring resentment over the broken engagement and attempting to frame her. It would only complicate matters further. Ms. Fong felt a wave of enlightenment. That's absolutely true. Ms. Neo's actions were indeed predictable. All right, then let's catch her in the act. Should we inform Taotao about this, so she can be prepared? Shao Yunduan and Qiao Xian exchanged a glance, and Shao Yunduan nodded. Yes, we should let her know. We'll discuss the plan further tomorrow. But let's keep this information from Dad for now. Shao Yunduan couldn't rely on his father, who often seemed oblivious to such matters. Ms. Fong chuckled. Of course not. He would never believe us. Head go console the second section of the family, fearing they might be wrongly accused. Huh. Qiao Xian and Shao Yunduan exchanged a bemused look as Ms. Fong left the room. Shao Yunduan's expression turned serious as he sighed, massaging his forehead. Things would have been much simpler if he hadn't decided to pursue a career as an official. He now had to consider numerous factors, and it was hard to determine if his family might become the target of some conspiracy. Thankfully, his mother possessed a clear mind. Xiao Xian sighed. Yu Xiaomiao seems like a level-headed person. Xiao Miling is fortunate to marry him, and it's surprising that the second aunt-in-law refuses to believe it. Xiao Yinduan smiled. I'm not sure what makes her so confident. Xiao Xian pondered for a moment and smiled as he asked. Yu Xiaomiao is quite intriguing. I believe he still wants to marry Miling. What do you think? Xiao Yinduan nodded, a grin forming on his face. It would be ideal if he marries Xiao Miling. He seems capable of keeping her in check. As cousins from the second and first sections of the family, Xiao Miling was known for her strong-willed and outspoken nature. Once she was married, it would be challenging to rein her in. If someone were to try and manipulate her, she might even become a force to be reckoned with. If her husband possessed the ability to manage her and handle situations wisely, it would make things much smoother. Otherwise, they could face considerable trouble in the future. When that time came, it might not be possible for the first section of the family to remain uninvolved. Xiao Yinduan was delighted to assist Xiao Miling in marrying into the Yu family, rather than allowing her to choose an uncertain partner. The second aunt-in-law opposed this potential son-in-law, hoping that Taotao would take over instead. However, Xiao Yinduan had no intention of allowing that to happen. He wanted to show her the consequences of her actions, to make her understand the meaning of reaping what you sow. They engage in a lengthy discussion about the plan before finally retiring for the night. Chapter 859, Waiting Udid by Bexenville. CM The anticipated day arrived when Yu Xiaomiao came to present the gift. To ensure the success of their plan, the second section of the family spared no expense. They had 2 plump chickens slaughtered, braised 2 fish, and procured a variety of meat. They even had Shao Silang bring tofu, yubas, and dried tofu from the Yin family the day before. Ms. Yin, unaware of the scheme, interpreted her mother-in-law's generous gesture of inviting the first and third sections of the family for dinner as a sign that they had reconsidered and accepted the marriage. Thus, she actively offered her assistance. Only Ms. Zhang's eyes gleamed with excitement, as if her heart was leaping with anticipation. She couldn't wait to witness the spectacle unfold. Yu Xiaomiao arrived at 10 in the morning, and Ms. Niu, along with second uncle, who still believed he was on their side, greeted him joyfully. Second uncle pulled him aside, speaking in a hushed and smiling voice. You need to pretend to be drunk, but not actually drunk. They'll have the brothers guide you to the wing room. Once the girl is there, you know what to do. Just remember not to go overboard. It was all part of the show, not a genuine move. Taotao would be defenseless if she ended up in the same room as Yu Xiaomiao. Second uncle certainly didn't want Yu Xiaomiao to make any real advances towards Taotao under his roof. It wouldn't bode well for his reputation. Yu Xiaomiao chuckled inwardly, then turned to his future father-in-law, nodding earnestly. But he couldn't help but wonder who would be accompanying him in the room. Ms. Niu instructed her 2 daughters-in-law to prepare 2 tables filled with delicious food and gathered the entire family together. Yang Xiaoni openly praised Ms. Niu for her generosity, which made Ms. Niu feel uneasy. Generous? She was coerced into this. She had no desire to do any of it. Xiao Lulang was absent. Third uncle claimed he was too busy studying and couldn't join for lunch. NIS. Niu and second uncle had invited so many people with the intention of creating chaos, making it easier to execute their plan. They also wanted witnesses to avoid any potential denials. Xiao Lulang's absence didn't concern them. Eldest uncle expressed great concern for Xiao Lulang, saying emotionally, Lulang is working so hard now. Please take care of him and make sure he doesn't overexert himself. Ms. Ma sighed, feeling worried. She refrained from boasting about her son as she had done before. Third uncle beamed with pride. Lulang must have thought it through. I'm confident he'll make it next year. He's ambitious, and he promises us a future filled with happiness as he pursues his path to becoming an official. The table was set with various dishes, and Shao Xiaoji, Taotao, and Ms. Zhang enjoyed their meal in the kitchen with Xiao Miling. while the rest of the family gathered around the table in the hall. The table was filled with an abundance of dishes, and 2 jars of wine were prepared. Second uncle opened the wine and invited everyone to join in the drinking. Ms. Fong discreetly glanced at Ms. Niu, who was far from stingy when it came to pouring the wine. She encouraged everyone to drink as much as they could. Ms. Fong cursed inwardly. That woman only showed generosity when she had ulterior motives. If given the chance, she would give her a thorough scolding. Yu Xiaomiao appeared to be heavily intoxicated as he reached the halfway mark. His face had turned red, and it was evident that he was truly drunk. Chapter 860. Coldness uttered by Bexenville. CM third uncle playfully teased second uncle. Looks like your son-in-law has a low alcohol tolerance. He's already drunk after just a little wine. People have different drinking capacities. He's drunk, so he needs some rest. We can continue celebrating, second uncle replied with a smile. He then turned to Shao Sanlang and said, Shao Sanlang, help Yu Xiaomiao to the wing room with Qi for some rest. Shao Sanlang and Qi were unaware of the situation but agreed to assist, helping Yu Xiaomiao up from his seat. Ms. Niu stood up as well. He'll guide you in. Help him. Once Yu Xiaomiao was settled, Shao Sanlang and Qi returned to the hall, and Ms. Niu followed closely behind. She exchanged a few words in the kitchen, not to share any important information, but to provide Shao Miling and Ms.Zhang with some subtle cues. Ms. Niu walked briskly, feeling a sense of anticipation. She was eager to witness the unfolding drama. After completing her task, she planned to find an excellent match for her own daughter, making Taotao envious for the rest of her life. Shao Miling and Ms. Zhang exchanged a knowing glance and couldn't help but feel pleased. Soon, they finished their meal. Shao Miling mentioned that she had something to discuss privately with Taotao. Shao Xiaoji felt slightly displeased being left alone. However, with Shao Miling's impending marriage, the cousins decided to set aside any grievances during this joyous occasion. So Taotao followed Shao Miling to another location. Taotao's heart sank, overcome by a chilling sense of unease. If her mother hadn't given her a warning beforehand, she would have been completely unprepared for this situation. Shao Miling glanced at Ms. Zhang as she led Taotao to the wing room, wearing a smile. I left my sewing needles and thread inside the room. Can you help me find them? Taotao gave her a complex look, a mixture of emotions swirling within her. Deep down, she wished that Shao Miling would feel remorse at this final moment. Shao Miling sensed the intensity of Taotao's gaze, feeling a discomforting sensation. However, she quickly dismissed the feeling. Taotao's palms grew clammy with sweat. Once inside the wing room, Shao Miling pretended to search for something and asked Taotao for assistance. Soon, Ms. Zhang called Shao Miling out of the room, and Shao Miling instructed Taotao to continue searching while she stepped away momentarily. The two women exchanged a conniving grin before parting ways. Shao Miling made her way back to the room, pretending to be oblivious to everything that was about to unfold. Meanwhile, Ms. Zhang went to relay the message to NIS. Niu. Once Ms. Niu received the message, she would know that everything had been set in motion. Inside the wing room, Yu Xiaomiao's task was to embrace Taotao, unaware that she was not Shao Miling. He wouldn't be held accountable for his actions. Ms. Niu's face lit up with a bright smile upon seeing Ms. Zhang. She turned to Shao Sanlang and said, Sanlang, could you please check on Xiaomiao? I'm feeling a little concerned. She had already gone after the food was finished. The first section of the family needed to witness this firsthand. As soon as Shao Sanlang raised his voice, they would all rush in that direction. Shao Sanlang agreed, setting his chopsticks down and leaving the table. Soon, a scream echoed through the air. What's happening here? What's going on? What happened to Sanlang? Let's all go and see. NIS. Niu hurriedly dashed out of the hall. Ms. Qiao, Xiao Yunduan, and Ms. Fong, who were privy to the plan, could only shake their heads in disbelief. NIS. Niu was certainly driven by her own motivation. Ms. Fong sneered. Let's all go and have a look. Chapter 861. Not Taotao uttered by Bexenville. CM is Niu, filled with confidence, continued to shout before entering the room. "Oh, Taotao, what are you doing here? Oh my God, what is happening? What should we do?" Second uncle followed suit. "What? Taotao? Why is Taotao in Xiaomao's room?" Ms. Niu exclaimed. "Nobody knows what's going on." "Oh my God." Ms. Fong, aware of the truth, sneered at Ms. Niu, her eyes burning with anger, wishing she could slap her across the face. Xiao Xian struggled to contain her laughter, barely holding it in. Shao Yunduan stood calmly by her side, enjoying the spectacle. Eldest uncle was on the verge of fainting. "What? Taotao?" He rushed forward and opened his eyes, only to be taken aback. Wait a minute. The girl sitting on the floor in the intoxicated Yu Xiaomao's arms was not Taotao at all. It was Myling. But hearing his brother and sister-in-law's persistent calls, eldest uncle began to doubt himself. He rubbed his eyes and looked closely. He wasn't mistaken. He could unmistakably recognize his own daughter. "What? Brother and sister-in-law, are you sure? This is Myling." Ms. Fong burst into laughter and turned to Ms. Niu, saying, "Honestly, second sister-in-law, instead of just shouting, open your eyes and see who is in your son-in-law's arms. It's Myling. Why you keep shouting, Taotao? What's the meaning of this?" Ms. Fong raised her eyebrows and spoke furiously. "Why did you involve Taotao in this? Are you trying to ruin Taotao's reputation?" Ms. Niu and second uncle were taken aback, their faces filled with shock. They looked in the direction pointed out and stood there, dumbfounded. "That's Myling. Why Myling? What is happening?" Ms. Niu, pulling Yu Xiaomiao away, snapped at Ms.Zhang and Ms. Yin. "Why are you just standing there? Help her up. What is happening? It's your fault." Ms. Fong sneered and spoke fiercely. "Why did you think it was Taotao?" Ms. Niu and second uncle were bewildered. Ms. Niu stammered, "Oh, I was mistaken. How coincidental," Shao Yunduan calmly remarked. "Both of you were mistaken." Second uncle forced a smile. "I heard your second aunt-in-law shouting Taotao, so I thought, oh really? So you actually believed it was Taotao?" Ms. Fong sneered. Second uncle was taken aback. "That can't be true," Ms. Fong said proudly. "It seems that Myling truly loves her suitor. Otherwise, she wouldn't have come to see her fiancé in person. But why did she faint? It seems like a destined marriage." Ms. Niu felt as if she were about to collapse. She glared at Ms. Fong, but couldn't do anything about it. She had to endure all the humiliation coming from Ms. Fong. Ms. Fong gave her a disdainful look, snorted with irony, and said, "I'm sure you have a lot to deal with right now, so we'll leave you to it. Goodbye. Let's go, old man." Ms. Fong pulled elder uncle out of the room. As they left, elder uncle was about to say something. He also sensed that something was amiss here, but he couldn't bring himself to ask what it was. Chapter 862. Problem Udded by Bexenville. Seeing Ms. Fong and elder uncle departed, followed by Qiao Xian and Shao Yunduan, who exchanged a knowing glance before leaving as well. Once they were gone, Ms. Niu snapped at Ms. Yin, "Go and join the first section of the family. Erlang and Silang, both of you leave us." Ms. Yin was taken aback by her mother-in-law's anger, but understood that it was best to comply. She nodded and left the room. "Mom," Shao Erlang and Shao Silang hesitated, reluctant to leave. They were displeased with Yu Xiaomao's behavior and were curious about why Myling was present and had fainted. It all seemed highly peculiar, and they wanted answers. However, second uncle grew impatient. "Just get out of here. Stop murmuring." The two brothers were startled, but decided it was best to leave. They remained silent and exited the room, knowing that their parents would uncover the truth eventually. Their presence would be of little use at the moment. Once the unrelated individuals had departed, Ms. Niu and second uncle turned to Yu Xiaomiao, their faces filled with anger. "What are you doing here? What happened? What did you just do? Why is Myling here? Where is Taotao?" "She was supposed to be here," Ms. Niu exclaimed, frustration evident in her voice. Yu Xiaomiao had sobered up and spoke in a more composed manner. "How was I supposed to know? You instructed me to pretend to be drunk, and you would take care of the rest. You assured me that Taotao would be brought here so that one would be found in the same room with her, forcing her into marriage with me. But instead, it was Miling who ended up here. I'm just as confused as you are. Stop arguing. Second uncle interjected, raising his voice. You were only pretending to be drunk. Miling couldn't have arrived here on her own. That's right. You were just pretending. Ms. Neo added. Yu Xiaomiao shouted in frustration. No, I wasn't. I may not have been truly drunk, but my head was spinning. Someone opened the door. I didn't open my eyes immediately. When I finally did, I saw Miling on the floor. It startled me, so I got off the bed to check on her. Then Shao Sanlang arrived, followed by all of you. The room was filled with tension as they tried to make sense of the situation and understand how Miling had ended up in that room instead of Taotao. Second uncle and Ms. Neo were filled with a mixture of anger and regret, unable to find the right words to express their emotions. Realizing that Miling was awake, Yu Xiaomiao sneered inwardly but decided to suggest, perhaps we can ask Miling herself what happened. Shao Miling was lying in the bed where Yu Xiaomiao had been pretending to sleep. Given their engagement, it was not inappropriate for them to be in the same room. Ms. Neo glared at Yu Xiaomiao and shook Shao Miling to wake her up. Shao Miling slowly opened her eyes, looking confused. What happened to me? Where am I? Mom, where is Taotao? What happened to her? I bet she's crying, isn't she? Huh? Her eyes sparkled with a mix of anxiety and cunningness. Chapter 863 Revenge Uded by Bexenville. Come. Ms. Neo struggled to find the right words to respond to Shao Miling's questions. Yu Xiaomiao cleared his throat, trying to regain some control of the situation. Shao Miling shouted at him, Mom, why is he here? Where's Shao Taotao? Having recognized Yu Xiaomiao, Shao Miling's eyes widened in shock. She turned to second uncle and demanded, Did you bring Taotao here? Why was I in Yu Xiaomiao's arms when you entered? Second uncle clenched his teeth, his eyes filled with anger. Why are you shouting? Explain why you were with Yu Xiaomiao when we arrived. That's impossible. Shao Miling stared at Yu Xiaomiao. I did bring Taotao here. Her voice gradually trailed off, and panic set in. She tightly gripped Ms. Neo's sleeves. I intended to return to the kitchen, but someone struck me on the head. Yes, I was knocked unconscious, and now I'm here. Mom, what's happening? Can you explain? What? You were knocked unconscious? Who could have done it? Second uncle and Ms. Neo exchanged panic glances, their shock evident. The three of them engaged in a lengthy discussion, attempting to piece together the sequence of events. However, the most perplexing question remained. Who had knocked out Shao Miling and brought her to this room? It must have been someone from the first section of the family. No one else would do such a thing to us. How terrible, how dreadful. Dad, Mom, I refuse to marry into the Yu family. I don't want to. It was supposed to be Taotao, not me. Enough. Shut up. We can't let this go. We must confront the first section of the family and demand answers. Suddenly, the door was forcefully kicked open, and Ms. Fong barged in, heading straight for Ms. Neo. Before Ms. Neo could react, Ms. Fong grabbed her hair and pulled it violently. Ms. Fong screamed as she struck Ms. Neo. You wicked woman. How dare you try to frame Taotao? How dare you? No wonder you suddenly changed your mind about breaking off the engagement. You wanted my Taotao to your daughter's place. You wicked witch. Ms. Fong continued to scream in anger, delivering blow after blow to Ms. Neo, who cried out in pain. Shao Miling stood frozen, trembling in fear. She was too terrified to even cry. Stop it, elder sister-in-law. Stop. Second uncle pleaded desperately, wanting to intervene but hesitating. He had lost much of his confidence after everything was exposed. Elder brother, tell elder sister-in-law to stop, he urged, looking at elder uncle. Elder uncle appeared to be lost, as if his spirit had been crushed. Second uncle continued to implore him. Eldest uncle observed the scene, but remained silent, struggling to find his own words. Eldest uncle realized that he couldn't order Ms. Fong to stop her actions. Ms. Fong didn't actually remove them from the vicinity, but concealed them nearby. He felt irritated by the idea of eavesdropping, but Ms. Fong insisted that he should witness the unfolding events, which left him perplexed. Then she instructed him to listen, questioning his integrity. Why would he eavesdrop on his brother and use Xiaomiao discussing what had transpired? But Ms. Fong compelled him to hear the truth. And that was exactly what he heard. After a while, Ms. Fong released her grip on Ms. Niu, having momentarily satisfied her anger. Chapter 864. Eavesdropping Udid by Bexenville. Seeing Ms. Fong pointed directly at them. Her eyes filled with anger as she unleashed her curse. From this moment on, we have nothing to do with you anymore. I'm far from finished with this. I will rally the entire clan to seek justice for what you've done. You are truly despicable, and mark my words, your actions will only worsen. Both Ms. Niu and second uncle's faces underwent a sudden change, visibly taken aback. Ms. Niu's face swelled up, displaying numerous blood traces and broken lips. She grimaced in pain, but managed to speak through gritted teeth. Didn't you leave? How dare you eavesdrop on our conversation? Regret washed over Ms. Niu and second uncle at this critical juncture. However, despite the accident, they were desperate for an explanation. That was why they had wanted to interrogate Yu Xiaomiao. Little did they expect that Ms. Fong and eldest uncle would still be present. Ms. Fong sneered, her voice dripping with disdain. So what? I now have proof that will expose your secrets. Yet, there was no need for them to remain any longer. Let's go, old man, Ms. Fong exclaimed, urging eldest uncle to leave. Second uncle pleaded, his voice tinged with remorse. Elder brother, elder sister-in-law, we deeply regret our actions. We were misguided, but it was all for the sake of our child. Ms. Fong retorted, her words laced with venom. You framed our child to protect yours. How utterly repulsive. Caught off guard, second uncle stuttered, his voice lacking confidence. We are sorry, but Taotao is still all right, isn't she? Elder brother, elder sister-in-law, please let it go. We're family. Ms. Fang's gaze intensified as she glared at second uncle, her wish to strike him becoming almost tangible. Where is this notion of family when you plotted against Taotao? She spat back, her words filled with seething anger. That's only because we are capable of taking care of her. It doesn't make you good people. Ms. Niu muttered, her words filled with resentment. You knocked out Myling, didn't you? Which one you did it? She questioned, her voice accusingly pointed at them. Qi, along with Ms. Su, Yang Xiaoni, and Qiao Xian, had already left after finishing their meal. It seemed likely that Qi was the one who had incapacitated Shao Myling. Being a boy, he possessed the strength to do so. So what? Ms. Fong cursed vehemently, her anger evident. You set us up, and we played our part. You, Ms. Niu exclaimed. Shut up. From this moment on, we are cutting off all ties with you. Old man, come, let's go talk to the land officer and resolve this matter within the clan. Ms. Fong declared firmly, ready to depart. Ms. Niu trembled with anger, but her fear quickly overtook her. Hurriedly, she moved to stop Ms. Fong, and second uncle joined her in their attempt. No, you can't go. Ms. Niu pleaded desperately. Elder sister-in-law, why be so cruel? Elder brother, say something. Second uncle implored. Save your breath. Ms. Fong sneered, her voice filled with derision. You won't be able to stop me, so give it a try, and don't even think you can confine me here. Elder brother, we're truly sorry. After all, we are family, aren't we? It would be an enormous scandal, wouldn't it? It would tarnish Taotao's reputation as well. NIS. Fang's response was swift and sharp. Taotao has had nothing to do with this from the very beginning. She has her brother to care for her. Ms. Niu and second uncle continued to implore, their pleas filled with desperation. Eldest uncle sighed heavily, feeling overwhelmed by the situation. The conversation he overheard outside had shocked, saddened, and deeply disappointed him. His own brother and sister-in-law had orchestrated a scheme against his own daughter. They had plotted to break off the engagement and replace Taotao with their own child. How could they treat Taotao this way? They didn't regard him as an elder brother at all. However, despite his inner turmoil, Taotao had remained unharmed. And now, seeing the couple beg before him like this, he found himself unable to utter any words of reproach. Chapter 865, Second Sister-in-Law's Idea, edited by Bexenville. CM, if news of this situation were to spread, their own family would become a laughingstock, which was far from desirable. Eldest uncle turned towards Ms. Fong, his voice barely audible as he suggested, "What if we persuade the two couples to admit their mistakes and make a promise? Let's just let it go. Our family's reputation will suffer as well." Ms. Niu and second uncle expressed their agreement with cheers and nods. However, Ms. Fong, who had managed to calm herself after venting her anger on Ms. Niu, was once again provoked by eldest uncle's words. She shouted angrily, "No way. You foolish old man, your mind is so muddled. If it weren't for Taotao's luck, we would be the ones suffering here. Your brother and sister-in-law are nothing but trash. They were trying to ruin Taotao's life. And you old fool, agree just because of a few tears and insincere words. What do you truly think of Taotao in your heart? Is she your daughter? Let me tell you, I will never agree to this solution. And ask our sons, do you think they would agree? Taotao has done nothing wrong, and neither have we. What does a mere name matter? There's no way we will ever agree to it." Ms. Fong had no intention of making peace, and she even berated eldest uncle, leaving him dumbfounded. Second uncle and Ms. Niu were equally stunned. As Ms. Fong rushed out, the two of them stood frozen, not daring to stop her in any way. Shao Miling suddenly jolted awake. If this matter were to be brought before the clan, the first section of the family would undoubtedly side with their own family, causing them to lose everything. She shouted, desperation evident in her voice. It was second sister-in-law's idea. It was all her doing. It has nothing to do with my parents. Elder aunt, if you want to blame someone, blame second sister-in-law. It was her idea. Everyone was taken aback, their expressions filled with shock. Second uncle and Ms. Niu shared in the same astonishment. Ms. Fong also came to a halt, turning to face Shao Miling with a cold gaze. Shao Miling recoiled, her voice trembling as she confessed, "I never intended to break off the engagement, but one day, second sister-in-law approached me." In that moment, Shao Miling forgot about the promise she had made to Ms.Zhang. She didn't even recall the agreement they had reached. Being a selfish woman who harbored dislike for Ms.Zhang, Shao Miling felt no remorse for betraying her. Thus, she divulged every detail without hesitation. Everyone present, Ms. Niu nearly screamed in fury. That wretched woman! I knew it. She always wears a sinister expression and is full of wicked tricks. I want to beat her to death. Ms. Fong sneered, her tone dripping with disdain. Ms. Zhang may have planted the seed, but you willingly accepted her idea, didn't you? If you hadn't even entertained the thought, Ms. Zhang's suggestion would have had no effect on you. Shao Miling covered her face, sobbing uncontrollably. I just wanted to marry someone better. Ms. Fang's voice turned icy as she responded. Your mother had found you a suitable match. You aren't deserving of anyone better. Let me make it clear, if you ever try to benefit from Yunduin's troubles, I will tear you apart. Shao Miling trembled in fear, not daring to utter a single word. It wouldn't be long before Ms. Zhang arrived, escorted by others. Yu Xiaomiao felt a sense of speechlessness in the midst of it all. There was no need for him to play along anymore. With a polite wave, he bid them farewell and left. Chapter 866, Ms. Zhang's Embarrassment, edited by Bexenville. Ms. Niu and second uncle felt a deep sense of embarrassment. They had allowed their prospective son-in-law to witness this chaotic situation, and it exposed their lack of self-esteem. They couldn't find any words to undo what had already transpired. Second uncle composed himself, mustered a few kind words, and escorted Yu Xiaomiao out. Soon, members from both the first and second sections of the family gathered in the hall. Ms. Niu directed her anger towards Ms. Zhang, using her as an outlet for her frustration. She raised her hand and delivered a harsh slap across Ms. Zhang's face, causing her to stagger and fall. You wretched woman! I never should have kept you around. How despicable you are! Tears streamed down Ms. Zhang's face as she covered her injured cheek. Shao Erlang was taken aback by the scene and rushed forward to help Ms. Zhang, but he was abruptly stopped by Ms. Nio's stern command. "Stop! Don't touch her!" "Mom, what did she do? What are you doing? And what about you?" Shao Erlang questioned, bewildered by the situation. Ms. Nio felt pain coursing through her body, both physically and emotionally. It was only because of Ms. Zhang's actions that she found herself in this situation. "Ask her yourself. You wicked woman. You're a troublemaker." Shao Erlang was still grappling with confusion. "Mom, perhaps there's been a misunderstanding." Ms. Fong let out a disdainful snort before slowly recounting the entire story. Only Shao Yunduan, Qiao Xian, Qi, and Taotao were aware of it prior to this revelation. The rest of the family members were shocked by the revelation. They all cast scornful glances at Ms. Zhang. If the story was true, Ms. Zhang's actions were incredibly malicious. Ms. Yin felt a chill run down her spine. If Ms. Zhang were to remain in the family, she would insist on living separately, no matter what. She refused to share a roof with such a woman, for fear that she might be harmed in her sleep. Shao Erlang was taken aback, his eyes widening as if he had been struck by a heavy blow. Turning pale, he staggered backward a few steps. "You know, Erlang, no. You have to believe me. I never said those things. I never instigated Miling. She's lying." Ms. Zhang cursed inwardly at Shao Miling, Ms. Nio, and second uncle. They were all utterly useless. They had failed at such a simple task. If only they had been a little more competent and successful, it would have been the first section of the family who would be in tears right now. Not her. Ms. Zhang refused to admit that she was the mastermind behind the idea. Through tears, she pleaded, "I've returned, but none of you like me. You all despise me. I can't defend myself, but why do you continue to heap accusations upon me? I don't have the courage to say such things. Furthermore, if you force me to shoulder the blame, I would never be able to shake it off. Erlang, you have to believe me. What are you saying? You taught me everything." Shao Miling was consumed with rage, lunging towards Ms. Zhang, attempting to strike her. Shao Erlang intervened, stopping Shao Miling. "Miling, calm down. No violence." "Second brother." Shao Miling angrily pushed his hand away, snapping back. "She did it. She taught me everything. If it weren't for her, I would never have conceived of such an idea. But she refuses to confess. And now she's making me take the blame. Step aside. I'm going to kill her." Ms. Zhang sobbed, her voice filled with sorrow. Shao Erlang found himself caught in the middle, his expression filled with bitterness. Yet, he still positioned himself between Shao Miling and his wife. Miling, the second sister-in-law, did make a mistake in the past, but you can't solely hold her accountable. You need evidence. Chapter 867. A Potential Harm Uttered by Bexenville. "See, Emma, I am so furious." Shao Miling seethed with anger. "She told me when there were only two of us. I can't find any evidence. This person must have done this on purpose. That's why she's denying it now. What are you putting on that sad look for? You're the most vicious one." Shao Miling exclaimed, her anger apparent. Shao Miling looked infuriated and attempted to throw a punch at Ms. Zhang, but was restrained by Shao Erlang. She cursed and struggled against his grip. Yang Xiaoni whispered to Qiao Xian, "What are they doing here? I'm confused. Fifth sister-in-law, who do you think is lying?" Qiao Xian smiled and shook her head. "I'm not sure. There is no evidence. But what's your opinion?" "I'd rather not speculate." Yang Xiaoni chuckled and agreed. True. However, deep down, Qiao Xian believed that Shao Miling was telling the truth. Ms. Zhang had a shady character, and Shao Miling hadn't considered this aspect of their marriage, but Ms. Zhang might have. NIS. Zhang held a grudge against both the second and first sections of the family. If her plan had succeeded, the first section of the family would have become the victims and would have started hating the second section of the family, which was exactly what she desired. This woman posed a potential threat to everyone. Ms. Nio shouted, "Stop it, you too. Son, Miling doesn't lie. This person is not a good woman. Are you seriously going to believe a lying, vicious person who nearly got your son killed over your own sister? Are you out of your mind? Ms. Neo had barely finished speaking when Ms. Zhang broke down in tears. I knew it. You'll never forgive me for what I did. Ms. Neo spat, her annoyance evident as she exclaimed, No one will ever forgive you for this. I never begged you to come back. It was you who shamelessly showed up at our doorstep. You were divorced. How dare you return and put on such a pitiful act? I shouldn't have agreed. You wretched woman. No wonder Myling confronted you as soon as you came home. Admit it, you bitch. Elle didn't do it. You're all mistaken. It was you. You did it. Experiencing a headache, Ms. Fong snapped. That's your own family matter, and you can discuss it later. I need one resolution on this. The clan needs to be informed. Shao Yunduan agreed. Anything Mom says. Shao Sanlang angrily chimed in. Exactly. We can't just let it go like this. Taotao is a kind girl who was almost harmed because of you. Eldest uncle fell silent as he tried to speak. He did have a few things to say, but he knew that none of his words would make a difference. He suddenly felt a pang of sadness. None of his sons understood him at all. Ms. Fong stood up and declared, Let's go and find the land officer. No, elder sister-in-law. It's all Ms. Zhang's fault. She's a troublemaker. Well, kick her out of the family. Will that satisfy you? It's your decision, not mine. Most people in your family are irritating. Ms. Fong responded. Instead of engaging in further conversation with her, and under the protection of Shao Yunduan, Qiao Xian, and other family members, Ms. Fong hurriedly made her way to the land officer's house, paying no heed to eldest uncle's persistent attempts to stop her. Chapter 868. Not family anymore uttered by Bexenville. CM Ms. Fong was adamant about obtaining a satisfactory resolution. Ms. Neo and second uncle were shocked and couldn't let the first section of the family handle the situation alone. They brought along Shao Myling and had NIS. Zhang escorted while they ascended together with Shao Erlang. When the land officer and the elderly men from the clan gathered and heard the story, they were all taken aback and began lecturing the second section of the family. Naturally, they defended the first section of the family more, as their actions had been quite vicious and self-centered, impossible to ignore. Ms. Neo and second uncle felt deeply embarrassed by the situation. They could have argued if it were something else, but Ms. Fong and eldest uncle had overheard the conversation with Yu Xiaomiao as a witness. It was solid evidence. Ms. Neo pushed Ms. Zhang to the ground, labeling her as the culprit. She trusted her own daughter, and at this point, Ms. Zhang had to shoulder the blame regardless of the circumstances. Considering Ms. Zhang had done something similar in the past, almost everyone present believed Shao, Myling, and Ms. Neo. Ms. Neo continued to shout that they would divorce Ms. Zhang once again. She made a fierce vow, stating that they wouldn't have treated the first section of the family in such a manner if it hadn't been for Ms. Zhang's plan. None of this would have happened without her as the culprit. Thus, they sincerely hoped that the first section of the family would forgive them. NIS. Zhang continued to cry incessantly. As someone who had done something similar before, and with her mother-in-law and sister-in-law accusing her directly, she had no argument to counter. However, they were still a family, and Ms. Neo's decision had nothing to do with the land officer and the elderly men from the clan. But the second section of the family had almost caused harm to the first section of the family. Thankfully, Taotao was unharmed. The others offered a few consoling words, and while the two sections of the family wouldn't completely sever their relationship, a lingering grudge remained between them. From that moment onward, the first section of the family would no longer consider the second section as part of their family, treating them instead as an ordinary family from the same clan. Second uncle and Ms. Neo pleaded for forgiveness. No, we're a family bound by blood. We're not just an ordinary family from the clan. Elder brother, please say something. You want to prove of this, right? You promised our parents that you would take care of us. Why are you begging him? He's the most vicious and cruel man. If you hadn't refused to help us break off the engagement, we wouldn't have resorted to this. You're heartless. Eldest uncle let out a heavy sigh, and Ms. Fong, Shao Yunduan, Shao Sanlang, and even Shao Dalong looked at him expressionlessly. Tears welling up in her eyes, Taotao spoke. What do you have to say, Dad? In your eyes, you prioritize second uncle and third uncle's families, and their children are treated so well. You protect and assist them all the time, but what about me? Why am I not your niece, but just your daughter? Eldest uncle turned pale and stumbled back. What are you saying? Ms. Fong grabbed hold of Taotao as she coldly addressed eldest uncle. You are my beloved daughter, and I love you. Your brothers and sisters-in-law all love and protect you. We will never forgive anyone who tries to bully you. Xiao could no longer tolerate the situation. She calmly stated, the second section of the family attempted to harm Taotao today, and if we don't delve deeper into this, they may try to harm someone else tomorrow. If I can't obtain a satisfactory answer from the resolution, I will have to take matters into my own hands to vent my anger. I love Taotao, and I will never allow her to suffer. Ms. Neo screamed, what do you mean? Chapter 869, Paying Back Uded by Bexenville. CM Qiao Xian's smile was fleeting. We will repay you in the same way you hurt us. NIS. Neo was taken aback. What do you mean? Qiao Xian continued. We will employ the same methods you used against us. Ms. Neo, second uncle, and Shao Erlang all turned pale. That won't work. It's impossible. Ms. Fong sneered. You can frame us, but we can't do the same to you? That doesn't sound fair. Second uncle and Ms. Neo were left dumbfounded. Indeed, they could frame the first section of the family because they believed eldest uncle would always defend them, giving them the freedom to do as they pleased. Their best course of action now was to offer an apology. However, what if the first section of the family didn't like them and wanted to frame them in return? They would be incapable of defending themselves. They had never considered this before. It had never occurred to them that while they devised various schemes to torment the first section of the family, the same tactics could be used against them. Second uncle and Ms. Neo couldn't help but tremble. Xiao Xian stopped looking at them. Eldest uncle felt a profound sense of despair, but dared not utter a word. He had no control over Xiao Xian, Shao Yunduan, Ms. Fong, or anyone else in his family. One wrong word, and his brother's family would face even harsher consequences. Inwardly, he sighed. What had caused all of this? This incident would be accurately recorded in the clan's records. The land officer had tried to conceal the entire affair to prevent their reputations from being tarnished. But Shao Yunduan rejected the proposal. He urged the land officer to make the truth public. He wanted everyone to clearly understand the true relationship between the first and second sections of the family, ensuring that the latter wouldn't carry out any unpleasant acts under the guise of the former. Second uncle and Ms. Neo were furious, but lacked the courage to say anything after hearing Qiao Xian's threat. News of the incident quickly spread, shocking the entire village. Many people criticized Ms. Neo for her foolishness. What was she thinking? It was fortunate that Taotao was unharmed. If something had happened to her, there would be no evidence to prove that Ms. Neo was responsible. However, the first section of the family would never forgive them either. To make matters even more absurd, they even attempted to find a better suitor for Shao Miling through Shao Yunduan. It was utterly ridiculous. Upon returning home, Ms. Neo was consumed by anger. She slapped and kicked Ms. Zhang, shouting at Shao Erlang and demanding that he divorce her once again. Ms. Zhang crumpled to the ground, sobbing uncontrollably with her head lowered. Shao Erlang found himself torn. He knelt down and pleaded with his mother to forgive Ms. Zhang. There was no proof implicating her, and her tears genuinely made him feel sorry for her. She was his wife, and he didn't want her to suffer from a false accusation. He wouldn't agree to divorce his wife based solely on the words of others. Ms. Neo was filled with frustration, her heart aching. She cursed Shao Erlang for being ungrateful and cruel. However, Ms. Zhang chose to stay despite everything that had transpired. Ms. Neo and second uncle became increasingly concerned about Shao Miling's marriage. Since Shao Miling and Yu Xiaomiao had been alone in a room together, they were compelled to get married. Now, they were apprehensive that the Yu family might cancel the engagement. After discussing the situation, the couple gathered their courage and sought support from the first section of the family. They approached Shao Yunduan, hoping he could assist and stand up for Shao Miling. Chapter 870. Auntie Nyo and Uncle Shao Udid by Bexenville. CM, elder brother, elder sister-in-law, don't you care about Shao Miling? She is your niece, and you can't simply allow her to be bullied after her marriage, can you? Please, elder brother and elder sister-in-law, pleaded the couple, finding a suitable moment to ask for the favor when eldest uncle was at home after dinner. Before eldest uncle could respond, Xiao Xin cleared her throat and spoke with a smile. Auntie Nyo, Uncle Shao, Taotao, is also your niece, but one am not sure if you would ever allow her to be bullied, considering what you've done. Yang Xiaoni and Ms. Su struggled to hold back their laughter. Ms. Fong snapped and glared at the couple, saying, Shao Miling is not innocent. Don't lie to me. I heard her laughing at Taotao when she thought her plan had succeeded. How dare you ask Yunduan to support her? Get lost. However, Ms. Nyo and second uncle seemed oblivious to Ms. Fang's words. They were stunned by Qiao Xian's way of addressing them. What are you calling us? They asked in disbelief. Qiao Xian responded, Auntie Nyo and Uncle Shao. Is there something wrong with that? Second uncle became so furious that he nearly fainted. Elder brother, Ms. Fong chimed in. Hey, there's no elder brother here. You have no manners. Just leave. Eldest uncle could no longer tolerate the situation. Ms. Fong, that's enough. Ms. Fong snorted. I want to emphasize that these two people have no relation to us. Why should I be the one in the wrong? Ms. Nyo and second uncle were both filled with anger and anxiety. It suddenly dawned on them that their connection with the first section of the family had been severed. And at this moment, the reality sank in for Ms. Nyo and second uncle. It wasn't a dream, but a harsh reality they had to face. Qiao Xian's way of addressing them had struck a nerve, making them realize the severance of their ties with the first section of the family. Shao Yunduan intervened, reminding eldest uncle that the land officer and the clan had already made the announcement, leaving no room for argument. Eldest uncle pleaded, Can't you help your fellow clan members? Shao Yunduan replied firmly, But I don't want to. Eldest uncle, Ms. Fong sneered. Did you hear that? My son loves his sister, and you're trying to force him? If you want to back them up, go ahead. But I will expose the true relationship between Ms. Nyo and Shao Delu with us. So, you'll be standing alone, not on our behalf. Eldest uncle muttered. Ms. Fong interrupted. Feel free to try. NIS. Nyo and second uncle were still in a daze as they were driven out of the Shao family's gate. As they looked at the towering house and the closed gate, they felt an emptiness in their hearts. Something was missing, something that could never be regained. They could sense each other's anxiety and worries. The realization hit them hard. There was no one to clean up their mess for them. The first section of the family, they've truly severed ties. Ms. Nyo seethed with anger and placed the blame on Ms. Zhang. It's all because of that troublemaker, Ms. Zhang. With a heavy heart, the couple reached out to Yu Xiaomiao, unsure of how the Yu family would react. To their surprise, the Yu family acted as if nothing had occurred and agreed to proceed with the marriage. They came to an agreement on the wedding date, which would be the 6th day of March the following year. The couple breathed a sigh of relief. Without the support of the first section of the family, they couldn't afford to say anything negative about the Yu family. Furthermore, Mrs. Yu had expressed regret over the initially rejected engagement, but Mr. Yu and Yu Xiaomiao decided to uphold the marriage arrangement. They were still blood-related, which would always be beneficial for them. Chapter 871. Buying Happiness Udid by Bexenville. CM Shao Miling seemed to be better off compared to the other girls, so why would they reject the marriage proposal? Despite her unpleasant personality, if she behaved well after getting married, everything would be fine. If she dared to act out, she would be dealt with accordingly. Ms. Yin wasn't pleased with Ms. Zhang's presence. She believed Shao Miling's claim that if her sister-in-law truly wanted to break off the engagement, she would have done so before Ms. Zhang returned. Clearly, something had transpired between them. To avoid Ms. Zhang, Ms. Yin decided to live separately from the rest of the family after the New Year and the Lantern Festival. Although the relationship between the two families had undergone a significant change, Ms. Yin continued to visit the first section of the family daily, and they treated her with equal respect. Qiao Xian and Ms. Fong suspected that Ms. Zhang was responsible for the situation. It was not surprising that she harbored resentment and might try to manipulate the first section of the family. Qiao Xian even cautioned Ms. Yin to be vigilant and avoid being framed by Ms. Zhang, as she appeared to be quite unstable. Ms. Yin was grateful for Qiao Xian's warning and sighed with a bitter smile, contemplating the possibility of living separately. Qiao Xian glanced at her with surprise and couldn't help but admire her resilience. Ms. Yin shook her head and chuckled. It could be very difficult. You know what your in-laws are like. They suspect Ms.Zhang, and they won't agree with your proposal. Initially, Ms. Yin had been filled with anger and tried to convince herself that it was necessary. However, at this point, she was no longer so sure. She understood how challenging it was to deal with her in-laws. If they disapproved of the proposal, there would be little she could do about it. Fifth sister-in-law, do you have any other suggestions? Please help me, she pleaded. Qiao Xian pondered for a moment and replied, Don't handle it yourself. Ask your parents to intervene, using both firmness and persuasion. Perhaps offering them some benefits could increase the chances of success. Ms. Niu and second uncle were afraid of confrontational individuals, but were inclined to take advantage of the more accommodating ones. If the Yin family exerted pressure and provided some incentives, Ms. Niu and second uncle might agree to the arrangement, especially considering that Shao Silang was their son and could support them despite the separation. However, the outcome would depend on what Ms. Yin was willing to offer in return. Yin thought for a while and quickly made a firm decision without any hesitation. She expressed her gratitude to Qiao Xian with a smile. Offering 10 or 20 liang, along with generous ongoing support fees, would be worthwhile. It was a price she was willing to pay for some peace. She had a substantial amount of money now, although she wasn't particularly eager to part with such a large sum. However, it wouldn't hurt her too much financially. With a weight lifted off her mind, Ms. Yin returned home, feeling content. However, she was met with a dark stare from Ms. Zhang once again. A chill ran down Ms. Yan's spine. She quickly glanced at Ms. Zhang and instinctively moved away, trying to avoid her. Zhang sneered, causing Ms. Yin to feel even more unsettled. Her heart raced, and she almost lost her balance. This woman was truly deranged. She was terrifying. Driven by Ms. Niu, Ms. Zhang had reached the brink of mental instability. After Shao Miling's marriage was finally settled, Ms. Niu had no other matters to attend to. Thus, she turned her attention towards Ms. Zhang. Her gaze was filled with malice, making her intentions clear. Chapter 872. Ms. Zhang's Blame Uttered by Bexenville. CM Translator. Henyi Translations NIS. Niu firmly believed that Ms. Zhang was responsible for all the troubles their family had endured, and she had no intention of giving her an easy time considering their past conflicts. Ms. Zhang was constantly tormented by Ms. Niu, and this constant torment had further deteriorated her original personality, making her even more sinister. She harbored a deep hatred for them, especially Ms. Niu. However, she didn't dare retaliate against Ms. Niu, as she was her mother-in-law and a senior figure in the family. She knew that if she did anything to Ms. Niu, her own suffering would only worsen, especially since she was already in a difficult situation without provoking Ms. Niu. A mother-in-law needed no excuse to berate her daughter-in-law. In this house, excuses were unnecessary. Frustrated and irritated, Ms. Zhang started to vent her anger on Ms. Yin. As they were walking together with their sons, Ms. Zhang suddenly pushed her own son, causing him to fall to the ground and burst into tears. Ms. Zhang screamed, "Fourth sister-in-law, how could you harm and push Xianwen like that? You're so vicious. I know you hate me, but you can't blame this on Xianwen. He's innocent." Ms. Yin was taken aback by Ms. Zhang's sudden outburst and her deteriorating mental state. Anger coursed through her, causing her to tremble. "Second sister-in-law, show me your evidence." I didn't lay a hand on Qian. Of course you did. You are too afraid to admit it. If you hate me, blame it on me, not on a child. Oh, my life is so bitter, my poor little boy. You're insane. You're lying. You're just too cowardly to admit it. What's all this shouting about? Ms. Neo emerged from the house, her impatience evident in her tone as she interrupted the argument. Ms. Zhang, what do you think you're doing? If you can't stay here quietly, then pack your bags and go back to your village. Ms. Zhang, with tears streaming down her face, held a deep grudge as she replied. It was the fourth sister-in-law who hit and pushed Qianwen. You're not blaming her. You're blaming me. I didn't do any of that, Ms. Yin exclaimed, denying the accusation. Shao Qianwen continued, crying inconsolably. Oh, my poor little grandson. Ms. Neo felt sorry for Shao Qianwen. She gently lifted him up, comforting him, and then instructed Shao Miling to take the child back inside. Nis. Zhang sneered and cast a proud glance at Ms. Yin. However, in the next moment, two loud slaps echoed through the air as Ms. Neo struck Ms. Zhang across the face. Pointing at her, Ms. Neo cursed. You are forbidden from going near Qianwen. Are you trying to harm him again? You vicious woman. Clutching her stinging cheeks, Ms. Zhang burst into tears. I didn't do it. It was the fourth sister-in-law. Shut up. I don't believe a word you say. Ms. Yin has no reason to do such things, and you kidnapped your own child. You're capable of anything. Elle didn't. It was the fourth sister-in-law. Ah. Ms. Zhang received another slap across the face. Just keep your mouth shut, you vile woman. You disgust me. If it weren't for troublemakers like you, our family wouldn't be in this mess. It's all your fault. You've already ruined Miling's marriage, and now you're targeting Ms. Yin. You never give up, do you? Ms. Zhang cried even harder. This only served to further infuriate Ms. Neo. She snapped. You bringer of misfortune. Be silent now. Kneel down right here and reflect on your actions. Chapter 873. Giving Up Pretending Udat by Zinvel. Ms. Zhang cried uncontrollably, collapsing onto the ground, her body trembling with anguish. Why? Why her mother-in-law had already made up her mind to support Ms. Yin without even considering her side of the story. She didn't believe a word Ms. Zhang said and continued to humiliate and torment her. Ms. Zhang felt herself spiraling into madness. Ms. Yin, who had been angry about the false accusations, unexpectedly felt a tinge of compassion towards Ms. Zhang. She could see that Ms. Zhang was truly suffering in this terrible situation. Nis. Zhang had never imagined that her mother-in-law would completely lose trust in her. It was fortunate in a way, as she no longer had to struggle to defend herself. After cursing Ms. Zhang, Ms. Neo sneered and turned to Ms. Yin, speaking in a gentle tone. It's getting cold outside. Let's go inside. Ms. Yin was taken aback, but nodded in agreement. Ms. Zhang's heart ached as she witnessed this interaction. She struggled to rise to her feet and spoke angrily. I know all of you hate me, but what have I done? If it weren't for your coldness and hostility, I could have lived a peaceful life and cherished my own children. Ms. Neo turned back, her eyes filled with fury, and ordered Ms. Zhang to kneel down. Your time is not up yet, she spat. Any remaining compassion Ms. Yin had for Ms. Zhang vanished as she replied, Second sister-in-law, no one owes you anything. You asked for money, but did you ever plan to repay it? You know very well that people are not obliged to fulfill your every request. Ms. Neo sneered in response. Repaying money? Her worthless brother has nothing to repay. Nis. Zhang shot a fierce glare at Ms. Neo. This only further infuriated Ms. Neo. What are you staring at? One, not allowed to complain about your worthless brother? Ms. Zhang, filled with anger and frustration, retorted defiantly, I'm not leaving. You can beat me to death if you want. I'd like to see how capable you are. If you kill me, you'll have to pay with a life. I'm not afraid of you. You can do whatever you want of me, but I'm staying right here. Both Ms. Yin and Ms. Neo were taken aback by Ms. Zhang's outburst. Realizing that she had reached her limit, Ms. Zhang decided to give up pretending and confronted Ms. Niu directly. Ms. Niu, furious at Ms. Zhang's defiance, responded angrily. "What are you saying, Ms. Zhang? Say it again. I'm not afraid of you. Drive me away if you want. You don't believe me, and Erlang won't believe you either. You vile bitch. He'll kill you." Ms. Niu, overcome with anger, rolled up her sleeves, ready to strike Ms. Zhang. Reacting instinctively, Ms. Zhang dodged the slap and pushed Ms. Niu away. "You dare to challenge me?" Ms. Niu, consumed by rage, lunged at Ms. Zhang, attempting to beat and scratch her. In a struggle, however, Ms. Niu slipped and fell hard to the ground. You wretched bitch! How dare you lay your hands on me?" Second uncle, having just returned from outside, witnessed the altercation. He quickly approached and assisted Ms. Niu, exclaiming, "What are you all staring at? Come and help." Ms. Yin, still in a state of disbelief, snapped back to reality. She hurriedly joined second uncle in assisting Ms. Niu to her feet. Meanwhile, Ms. Zhang remained where she was, displaying a seemingly emotionless expression. She had nothing to lose at that moment and was hesitant to intervene. Chapter 874. Embarrassed Udat by Zinvel. "See him, divorce her immediately. How dare she touch me? She's plotting to kidnap and kill me." Nis. Zhang, her lips bitten, responded weakly, "I didn't push her. Enough, I saw everything." Second uncle sneered. "Ms. Zhang, you truly have a wicked heart." Abandoning her pretenses, Ms. Zhang turned around and walked away. Ms. Niu and second uncle seethed with anger, feeling a deep sense of outrage. "She just walks away like this? How dare she? Our son is foolish to show any kindness to this vile woman." When Shao Erlang returned in the evening, Ms. Niu and second uncle pressured him to divorce his wife. Ms. Niu pounded on her chest, as if deeply wounded in her heart. Ms. Zhang, no longer pretending, cried uncontrollably, hoping to convince Shao Erlang of her innocence. That was all she wanted. She had given up pretending. But Shao Erlang, still enamored with her, hesitated to believe his parents' accusations without proof. His affection for her remained. Ms. Niu had never felt this level of fury before, especially when it was caused by someone as vile as Ms. Zhang. Overwhelmed by anger, she collapsed, leaving second uncle and Ms. Yin in shock. Furious, second uncle pushed Shao Erlang away, his voice filled with anger. "You trust this woman over your own parents? Do you want her to harm your mother, so you'll believe us? You're a terrible son." Shao Erlang was taken aback by his mother's collapse and felt overwhelmed with guilt. He cried uncontrollably, kneeling on the ground as he pleaded, "I didn't mean to. I didn't mean to. I need proof." "What proof do you need? Do you think your mother and I orchestrated this? You know very well what your mother is like. She may be nagging and stingy, but she would never falsely accuse someone of such things." Shao Erlang turned pale, burdened by guilt. Second uncle sneered. Even Ms. Yin witnessed everything. Shao Erlang suddenly looked up at Ms. Yin, and so did Shao Silang. Ms. Yin cursed inwardly at her father-in-law's stupidity. How'd she get caught up in this conflict? What could she say? She couldn't tell the truth, as her in-laws would never forgive her. But could she tell a lie? If she did, and they believed her, they would drive Ms. Zhang away. However, Shao Silang wouldn't blame his parents. He would blame her for ruining his marriage. Feeling trapped and conflicted, Ms. Yin sighed and looked down. "Father, you're putting me in an incredibly difficult position." She realized that no matter what she said, it wouldn't be well received by her second brother. Ms. Zhang screamed, "Fourth sister-in-law, why do you hate me and spread these rumors?" Ms. Yin responded coldly, "What did I say? I never touched Xianwen. You accuse me of pushing him when you and I crossed paths. What more can I say? I can't simply claim that you're using your own son to frame me, can I? But because of Dad's words, I had no choice but to speak up. Yet, no matter what I say, you refuse to admit the truth." Chapter 875. Divorce Again Udat by Zinvel. Seeing Ms. Niu regained consciousness and glared at Ms. Zhang, her anger intensifying. Divorce her now. Shao Erlang couldn't hold back his tears. His father was right. Although his mother was unreliable in many ways, she would never plot something like this. And his fourth sister-in-law didn't appear to be a liar either. Shao Erlang began to understand the truth unfolding before him. When his mother had fainted in anger, he had already sensed the reality of the situation. If his mother had orchestrated all of this, she wouldn't have collapsed like that. He just didn't want to believe it. But the truth could not be avoided. It would eventually reveal itself. Ms. Zhang, overwhelmed with despair, cried inconsolably. She realized that she was doomed. Her husband had lost faith in her and no longer wanted to defend her. What had gone wrong with her life? Suddenly, an angry resentment brewed within Ms. Zhang. She incessantly questioned why she was treated like a thief in her own home, never given a chance to atone for her mistakes. She vowed to never give them any peace in their lives. Ms. Zhang confessed to everything. The events of today, her involvement with Shao Miling. She even mocked them for their gullibility, claiming that she almost succeeded. What a shame. She taunted. Shao Erlang watched her in disbelief. Ms. Niu nearly fainted once again. The following day, Ms. Zhang was divorced and forcibly sent back to her home once again. However, the next day, she regretted her impulsive confession. Tearfully, she pleaded with the Shao family to allow her to stay until after the new year. Shao Erlang was on the verge of accepting her plea, but he was overruled by Ms. Niu and second uncle. Ms. Niu snapped, "Stay until the new year? I don't want to be poisoned to death by you." Upon hearing those words, Shao Erlang had no further arguments. He steeled his heart and, with the assistance of some fellow villagers, returned Ms. Zhang and the divorce papers to the Zhang village. Regardless of what Mrs. Zhang or Ms. Zhang said, their minds remained unchanged. Ms. Zhang had admitted to all her wrongdoings, and the villagers of Shouting were no longer willing to accommodate her. Back in the Zhang family's home, Ms. Zhang felt immense regret. Compared to the life she had with her mother, the torment she endured at her husband's home seemed insignificant. At least, in her husband's home, no one treated her like an animal or denied her food. She despised her mother-in-law, but she had never taken a moment to reflect on her own actions. If only she hadn't been so stubborn and blinded by her loyalty toward her brother, she wouldn't have ended up in this predicament. She had become a fool. What was wrong with her? Her own family showed no compassion, and she had even kidnapped her own son for their sake. But what had she gained in the end? She brought no benefits to her mother's family, and instead, she earned resentment and hatred from her husband's family. Now, she was being cursed and scorned by her own family. Everything she did was for the sake of her own family, but their treatment of her was completely different. Once again, Ms. Zhang attempted to elicit compassion from her in-laws through loud cries and even fainting, but Ms. Niu sent her back to the Zhang family that very night. Ms. Zhang finally gave up. She cried uncontrollably. She realized that her husband's family would never forgive her. And as for her own family, they didn't want her to waste any resources at home, so they sold her to a middle-aged man in a destitute, impoverished village. Her parents and brother couldn't wait to seize the opportunity to make some money, so they hastily arranged the deal. Chapter 876. Ms. Zhang's in Udat by Zinvel. CM the settlement was 5 liang. No matter how much she pleaded, she was still sold away. During her visit to Ms. Fong and Qiao Xian, Ms. Yin shared what had transpired with the second branch of the family and Ms. Zhang. Ms. Fong reacted with frustration. One knew it, but without evidence, there was little one could do to confront her. I simply thought it best to keep our distance. Nevertheless, it's a good thing that Ms. Niu divorced her. Qiao Xian sighed, acknowledging that Ms. Niu had, in a way, taken the right course of action. Sometimes, things were resolved in unexpected ways due to someone's brashness. All things considered, it was for the best. After all, it was extremely challenging to keep a safe distance from someone as extreme and malicious as Ms. Zhang, especially when neither Qiao Xian nor Xiao Yinwan were around. The concern for the well-being of the family weighed heavily on their minds. Qiao Xian still had worries regarding the papayas and dragon fruits. With that in mind, she decided to travel to the province, visiting First Madam and purchasing some gifts along the way. She also made arrangements for Qi to stay with Xie Jingrong and the Xie family. It wasn't a decision made lightly, as asking for such assistance was never an easy matter. The debt of gratitude would need to be repaid eventually. Moreover, Shao Yinduan wanted to avoid any rumors suggesting that he was heartless, potentially causing others to look down on him and making it harder for him to seek assistance in the future. Shao Yunduan valued his friendship with Xie Jingrong and the Xie family, but he couldn't simply owe them a favor indefinitely. However, when it came to Qi's safety, he didn't hesitate to take this step. He informed the family of his decision, and together they embarked on the journey to the province with Qi, Taotao, and Qiao Xian. As they arrived in the province, they noticed that the lights were already on, despite the early hour. Since it was quite cold inside the mansion, they opted to stay in a hostel instead. The following day, they paid a visit to First Madam, who was overjoyed to see them. She invited them to stay with the family and instructed her men to retrieve their luggage from the hostel. Qiao Xian and Shao Yunduan expressed their gratitude happily. Living there without Ms. Mi and Yuezheng Ting, Qiao Xian felt a sense of relief. Yuezheng Shao's brother, Yuezheng Hong, was also present, and he hosted a family banquet to welcome the couple and their family. It was a delightful occasion. Yuezheng Shao accompanied them outside of town to inspect the fruits. Although the fruits didn't grow during winter, they were still alive and not withered. They showed signs of vitality. Yuezheng Shao smiled with emotion. Honestly, I was worried about these seeds. I came to check on them a few days ago when the weather changed, and they seem to be doing well. I never expected that the fruits from the south could thrive so beautifully here. Qiao Xian had already used her superpower to test the fruits. They were all in good condition, with healthy roots underground. This brought her a sense of relief. She smiled and said, "It's not yet the coldest day, so we'll have to wait and see if they can sprout next spring when the weather warms up." Chapter 877. Qiao Xian's Happiness Udat by Zenvel. "See him, it should be." Yuezheng Shao expressed his confidence, adding, "I wouldn't be so sure if I were talking to anyone else but you. You have a remarkable talent for nurturing plants. I believe there won't be any problem at all." Qiao Xian laughed, accepting the compliment graciously. If Yuezheng Shao said so, then she didn't need to provide any further explanations. His confidence alleviated her concerns. As they walked through the garden, Qiao Xian took occasional breaks, using her superpower to assist the plants in thriving during the winter. She ensured that they would soon bud and flourish when spring arrived. Satisfied with her work, Qiao Xian spent an entire day in the garden, free from worries. Later, they had dinner with Xie Jingrong, during which they shared the news of Qi's voluntary decision to join the army and requested Xie Jingrong's support and protection. Xie Jingrong was taken aback by the news, but he spoke highly of Qi and readily agreed to Shao Yunduan's request. Providing a letter of recommendation was a simple task for the Xie family. As someone familiar with military camps, Xie Jingrong shared some insights with Qi. Qi's eyes sparkled with excitement as he listened to the stories. He nodded eagerly and asked curious questions. Even Shao Yunduan and Qiao Xian gained a better understanding, which alleviated their worries to some extent. Military camps might not be as dreadful as they had initially imagined. Xie Jingrong had an extensive collection of books on military and armies, and he offered to search for some suitable ones for Qi to read, which Shao Yunduan could take back home. Shao Yunduan was delighted with the offer and expressed his gratitude to Xie Jingrong, asking if he could make copies of the books. Xie Jingrong agreed, giving his permission for Shao Yunduan to make copies. Shao Yunduan decided to copy the books and store them in the village's library, which was currently under construction. He made copies of all the books he had access to from the Xie family's collection, being cautious not to ask for more than he was given, as it might seem greedy. After all, the Xie family had multiple members and resources to manage. Everything proceeded smoothly, and their hearts felt lighter. First Madam accompanied Qiao Xian and Taotao, joining them in purchasing various goods for the upcoming new year. Combined with the gifts from First Madam, their wagons were filled to the brim. To Qiao Xian's surprise, she received an unexpected gift during this time. Yue had brought seeds of sweet melons, along with 2 large bunches of blueberry tree buds and cherry buds. He explained that the melons were delicious, but due to the long distance, they couldn't be brought back without the risk of rotting. Instead, he brought the seeds for Qiao Xian to plant at home. Blueberries thrived in mountainous regions and could be made into delicious jam, so he had brought some buds for her to grow. The same applied to the cherry buds. Yue generously offered Qiao Xian the opportunity to start planting them at home. If they thrived and survived, he would provide her with more. Qiao Xian expressed her heartfelt gratitude for the thoughtful gifts. Sweet melons, essentially cantaloupes, didn't have their current name yet, as it would be coined in the future when they were introduced. The prospect of growing cherries and blueberries excited Qiao Xian. She believed they would flourish in their care. With utmost care, Qiao Xian took the precious gifts home, treasuring them like her most valuable possessions. Chapter 878. Surprise Udat by Zinvel. CM This trip had been highly productive and fruitful for them. With the new year approaching, First Madam insisted they didn't stay for too long. She even invited them to join them after the new year, so they could travel with the business troops to the capital. Qiao Xian and Shao Yunduan expressed their gratitude and appreciation for the invitation. Traveling from the province to the capital couldn't be done by boat. It had to be done over land. The journey was long and required careful planning. They couldn't simply hire a single wagon and set off. It wasn't convenient or safe. There were unknown dangers that could be encountered along such a lengthy journey. What if they encountered robbers on the outskirts? It would spell doom for them. Typically, a group of friends would gather together and travel to the capital collectively for the examination. It provided a sense of security and reliability. Another option was to find a business troupe heading to the capital. By offering them gifts and presents, they could gain permission to join the troupe and travel together. Usually, the business troops would approve of such requests, as the recommended individuals traveling to the capital had the potential to become successful officials. This created a sense of indebtedness toward the troupe. However, most business troops didn't travel such long distances. They needed to make stops along the way to sell their goods, sometimes spending days in bustling cities. Unfortunately, recommended men heading to the capital couldn't afford such delays. Not everyone was fortunate enough to find a suitable business troupe for their journey. However, First Madam had made arrangements for them in the province. By the time Shao Yunduan and Qiao Xian returned home, it was already the 20th of December. They arrived just in time for the preparations for the upcoming new year. They had purchased a wide variety of exquisite and delicious snacks, including candies, candied fruits, and roasted seeds and nuts. The assortment included delicacies such as lotus cakes, mung bean cakes, cloud cakes, poria cakes, shortbread, small twists, dragon beard cakes, sweet-scented osmanthus sugar, peanut sesame candies, pine nuts, small walnuts, melon seeds, almonds, and more. Shao Sanlang and his wife were overjoyed to see these treats. Each person also received 6 new sets of clothes, including shoes and socks, as well as women's rouge, gouache, various silk flowers, children's spinning tops, clay figurines, cloth tigers, tumblers, wooden knives, swords, pony puppies, and various toys. Additionally, there were dried seafood and other household items. Qiao Xian even purchased ornaments worth 200 to 300 liang for each girl in the family, including Shao Qing. Shao Junyan and his younger brother received a pair of golden bracelets and a golden key with jade. The first section of the family was ecstatic upon receiving these gifts. They spent half a day admiring and appreciating them. The next day, Qiao Xian was eager to begin planting the blueberries and cherry trees alongside Qi, Taotao, and Yang Xiaoni in the empty space designated for cassava cultivation. The other family members understood that these were fruit trees from other regions, and they eagerly anticipated the prospect of enjoying the fruits in the coming year. Their motivation was high as they joined in the planning process. As they set to work, Some passing villagers sneered, commenting that it wasn't the appropriate time for tree planting. They claimed that tree planting should commence after the Lantern Festival when the weather becomes warmer, unless there was a sudden return of spring coldness. Xiao responded with a smile, countering their skepticism. "I'll receive these trees from a friend in the province. They were brought from outside the city. I can't just leave them sitting here. Who knows, they might actually survive." Chapter 879, Not Giving Udat by Zinvel. CM Yang Xiaoni and the others agreed, despite the unconventional timing for tree planting. Perhaps, just maybe, these trees could defy the odds and survive. With renewed enthusiasm, they quickly transported the straws and covered the seeds, exchanging smiles and saying, "All right, we've provided them with warmth. Yes, our trees should make it through the winter." Satisfied with their efforts, they happily returned home. Upon their return, Ms. Fong asked Yang Xiaoni to prepare some items for the third section of the family. Shao Yunduan and Qiao Xian had purchased a significant amount of goods in the province, and it was only fitting to share some gifts with the third section as a gesture of goodwill. Considering Shao Yunduan's promising future, it was unnecessary to quibble over such minor matters. It wouldn't be worth tarnishing their reputation over such trivialities. Ms. Fong selected pastries, dried fruits, simple garments, and elegant silk flowers for them. Ms. Ma, aware that Xiao Xian and Shao Yunwan had returned from the province with 2 wagons full of items, expressed her gratitude and accepted the gifts. Shortly after Ms. Fong and Yang Xiaoni left, Ms. Ma started going through the presents and approached Ms. Niu, asking, "What did the first section of the family give you? Let me see them too." Confused, Ms. Niu responded, "What presents?" Ms. Ma pursed her lips. "Shao Yunduan went all the way to the province to buy things and gave some to us. Didn't they give you anything? They've become quite selective, haven't they? Traveling to the province just to buy things." She couldn't help but feel bitter as she thought about her hard-working son at home. Inwardly, she resolved that once her son became a recommended man, she would also hire a wagon and go to the province to buy things. Word spread quickly in the village, and Ms. Niu was well aware that Shao Yunduan and his wife had returned from the province. Her face twisted as she replied, "They didn't give us anything." Disappointed, Ms. Ma told Ms. Niu, "All right then, we'll talk about this tomorrow," and left. Ms. Niu eagerly anticipated the arrival of the first section of the family, but they never came. However, she soon spotted Shao Xiaoji wearing a beautiful silk flower on her head, proudly showing it off to Shao Miling, who became extremely angry. Ms. Niu shared this incident with her husband when he returned from visiting their neighbors. "That's outrageous. They gave presents to the third section of the family, but not us. They're looking down on us," he exclaimed. Second uncle grew annoyed and frowned as well. Ms. Niu couldn't tolerate it any longer. She believed that they deliberately excluded them, not because they were busy. "I can't tolerate this any longer. I'm going to go and talk to them," Ms. Niu exclaimed, her anger driving her to the first section of the family. Winter days grew darker earlier, and Xiao Xian was already preparing dinner, even though it was only 4 o'clock. They had decided to have sauerkraut fish hot pot and pork belly chicken hot pot for dinner. Ms. Niu's arrival caught everyone's attention, as they were busy with the food preparations. Yang Xiaoni smiled and asked, "What's the matter, Auntie Niu?" Ms. Fong raised an eyebrow, her expression unkind. Ms. Niu became even more irritated upon hearing that strange title. "Honestly, sister-in-law." "Hey," Ms. Fong interjected. "Who's the sister-in-law here? Just call me Ms. Fong. We're no longer the way we used to be, and it's not appropriate to address each other like that, right?" Chapter 880, Not Your Elder Sister-in-Law Udat by Zinvel. CM the others echoed her sentiments. "Ms. Niu, look at these daughter-in-laws. Are you really trying to start a fight here? Is it amusing?" "No one here is interested in starting a fight with you," Ms. Fong replied with a stern expression. "The family has already made it clear, and you can't ignore that. But it's a shame that you refuse to accept it. Furthermore, don't call me elder sister-in-law. It disgusts me." Ms. Fong would never consider her as a sister-in-law, especially after Ms. Niu tried to set up Taotao and forced her to marry someone they didn't approve of. Soon, Ms. Niu realized the reason behind it all. So, you gave presents to the third section of the family, and not us, because of this? Yes, Ms. Fong replied bluntly. The third section of the family is part of our family, but you are just like any other villagers with the same surname. If I give presents to you, should I give presents to everyone else in the village too? We can't afford that. It doesn't work that way. Ms. Niu fell silent. Only now did she realize the distinction between being part of the family and being from the same clan. Her heart felt bitter. She simply couldn't accept it. Elder sister-in-law. Don't call me that. You're so cruel. We share the same in-laws. We're not ordinary clan members. Doesn't elder brother know about this? Ms. Fong sneered. You're not ordinary clan members, and even ordinary clan members wouldn't have tried to arrange a marriage for my Taotao. You want my husband? Go and confront him yourself, if you dare. Ms. Fong dismissed her and drove her away after making her statement. Turning to the others, she said, Ignore her. Treat her like this from now on. She's nobody but someone from the clan. Ms. Niu felt as if she was going to faint and vented her frustration to second uncle. She grew increasingly infuriated by the situation. Second uncle turned pale as well, becoming lost in his thoughts. Others noticed that his anger seemed different now. Was the first section of the family truly serious about this? They had never believed it before, thinking that being brothers would prevent any change. However, the first section of the family had slapped them in the face. Times had changed. Meanwhile, Mrs. Yin and Shao Xiling had been visiting the Yin family, and Mrs. Yin had allowed them to stay for an extra half day. That's why they hadn't shown up until now. However, the couple was taken aback by the tense atmosphere at home. Ms. Yin inquired about what was happening. Ms. Niu had a lot to complain about to Ms. Yin, cursing the first section of the family for their actions. Deep inside, Ms. Yin smiled bitterly. If she had been at home today, she wouldn't have allowed her mother-in-law to confront the first section of the family about this. It was too humiliating. Mom, the clan has confirmed this, and our relationship has changed. Why bother? The decision of the clan is not something to be taken lightly. Ms. Niu shouted, So you think it's my fault? Ms. Yin silently agreed with that sentiment, but she replied, I'm just reminding you that the clan has made a decision, and the first section of the family agrees with it. There's no need to interrogate them any further. Second uncle angrily chimed in, That may be true, but it's going too far. That's exactly what I mean. Ms. Yin added, They're angry after all. Chapter 881. Silence Udat by Zinvel. CM, what are you blaming me for all the time? Ms. Niu snapped. It wasn't my fault with Taotao. It was that bitch Ms.Zhang. We already divorced and drove her out. What more do they want? Ms. Niu's eyes lit up. Let's go talk to eldest brother. Ms.Zhang has already been driven out, so we can ask eldest brother to inform the clan about this and put an end to it. We are a family, aren't we? We're not just ordinary people from the clan, are we? Ms. Fang's habit of giving presents to the third section of the family and ignoring the second section of the family would surely continue to happen in the future. And Ms. Niu wasn't going to tolerate it. Second uncle's eyes also lit up. That's true. It makes a lot of sense. Ms. Yin, perhaps it was best for her to say nothing at all. Even Shao Xiling didn't think it was the right course of action. He tried to dissuade his mother, but ended up being scolded. This only made Ms. Yin even more speechless. She would observe how they would handle the situation and potentially make it worse. Ms. Yin once again felt fortunate for having established a relationship with the first section of the family. Second uncle and Ms. Niu went to find eldest uncle without avoiding Ms. Fong and the rest of the family. They went to his place that very same night. Not in the mood to eat, they urged Ms. Yin to quickly prepare dinner, hastily ate some food, and hurried to eldest uncle's house. Upon arrival, they found that the first section of the family was already halfway through their hot pot feast. In the center of the large round table was a massive Mandarin duck hot pot. A low stove with charcoal fire was placed in the recessed part of the middle, with the hot pot sitting flush with the tabletop. The sauerkraut fish pot and pork belly chicken pot were brimming with rich, white soup that bubbled and tumbled, emitting a steamy and fragrant aroma. The table was adorned with an abundance of fish balls, meatballs, lotus root balls, shrimp slips, fish fillets, squid rolls, yuba, winter bamboo shoots, mushrooms, meat slices, egg dumplings, shredded vegetables, wax gourd slices, yam slices, taro slices, Chinese cabbage, lettuce, and more. A truly lavish spread. Ms. Neo and second uncle, who had lost their appetites earlier, suddenly felt their hunger intensify upon catching the tantalizing scent. They couldn't help but salivate at the sight of the food. Eldest uncle, unaware of what had transpired earlier, was pleased to see them. He beckoned them over. "Ah, there you are. Take a seat. Have you had dinner?" Ms. Fong mustered a forced smile and said, "Please, take a seat. If you've already eaten, you can wait until we finish our meal. If not, I suggest you go home and eat before coming back." She made it clear that they were not welcome to join them. Both second uncle and Ms. Neo blushed in embarrassment. How could they, who were already hungry, resist the tantalizing aroma of the delectable sauerkraut fish and chicken soup? The array of mouth-watering dishes left them captivated. Eldest uncle noticed their longing gazes and turned to young Xiaoni, instructing, "Ms. Yang, please bring 2 bowls and 2 pairs of chopsticks." "Stop it," interrupted Ms. Fong calmly. "We won't share our food with such a malicious couple. I fear their presence will spoil everyone's appetite. I will always remember how they attempted to ruin my daughter's life. We cannot simply move past that." Eldest uncle froze and glanced at Taotao. His heart sank when he saw the sorrowful expression in Taotao's eyes. NIS. Neo and second uncle's hunger intensified as they watched the delectable feast slip away from their grasp. "Elder sister-in-law." "Don't call me elder sister-in-law. It sounds dreadful. Just call me Ms. Fong." Chapter 882. Respect Udat by Zenvel. CM Taotao. Well, that was all Ms. Zhang's fault. She confessed to trying to manipulate us. We have already expelled her from our family, and we assure you that nothing like this will happen again. We sincerely apologize, and let's put this behind us. After all, we are still a family, aren't we? Exactly. Ms. Fong had an overwhelming urge to strike the couple. Enough already. Ms. Fong retorted with disgust. Ms. Zhang attempted to manipulate you, and you fell for it. You are far from innocent. We are not a family, not even in your wildest dreams. Shao Yunduan interjected coldly. This is no laughing matter, Auntie Neo and Uncle Shao. Please go home and refrain from bringing this up again. Yang Xiaoni rolled her eyes and said, Ms. Zhang had no authority over the family. Yet you let her words sway you? How gullible. Qiao Xian sneered. That's how some people always are. They never take responsibility and always shift the blame onto others. They play the role of innocent victims, manipulated by someone else. Yang Xiaoni hesitated before adding, Indeed, no one forces such individuals to engage in wrongdoing. It's an absurd excuse. Qiao Xian chimed in, but certain individuals don't find it absurd. They genuinely believe they are misunderstood. That's shameless. So shameless to make such statements. Absolutely. We can't associate with people like this. They will only have a negative influence on us. And on our children, too. Absolutely. You're absolutely right, fifth sister-in-law. I didn't even realize that. Everyone present, Ms. Neo and second uncle's emotions were on the verge of exploding. You are showing us no respect. Eldest uncle couldn't bear it any longer. Ms. Qiao and Ms. Yang, please stop. Xiao Xian maintained a calm smile. Dad, third sister-in-law, and I were simply having conversation. Since when did we show disrespect to anyone? And as for using names, did you assume we were referring to someone? Eldest uncle found himself at a loss for words. Ms. Fong burst into laughter. Ms. Qiao and Ms. Yang are absolutely right. Just leave right now, or I will personally escort you out. Shao Xiaoqi waved his hands impatiently. If you keep coming to my family to cause trouble, don't expect any kindness from me. Elder brother, take a look at this. Get out. Ms. Fong snapped, and Shao Sanlang and Shao Xiaoqi stood up, forcefully removing second uncle from the premises. Eldest uncle put down his chopsticks, his face turning pale. "I understand your anger, and 1 a.m. also concerned about Taotao. But it's not a major loss to us, and they know they are wrong. Why do you keep pressing them like this?" Ms. Fong sneered. "What's the use of saying that now? Perhaps you can advise them tomorrow to stay away from us. As for the rest, I couldn't care less." Xiao Yunduan's voice turned cold. "Dad, we're just two ordinary families. If they continue to escalate things, I will never forgive them. Mom is right. We will never forget what happened to Taotao." Eldest uncle felt a heavy blow, glanced at them, and quietly left. Shao Yunduan felt a sense of unease, but he knew he had to stay firm. He didn't expect his father to suddenly change his character or viewpoint, but he couldn't let him involve other family members in this situation. He had made up his mind to not offer them any more chances. Chapter 883. Not even his father Udat by Zinvel. See him in reality. The disputes between the second section of the family and the third section of the family were trivial matters driven by greed and unreasonable desires. However, when it came to the safety and well-being of his family members, Shao Yunduan refused to back down. Even if it meant confronting his own father, he was prepared to do so. He had seen through his father's nature, or to put it more bluntly, his father would only recognize the danger when something irreversible happened. In that case, Shao Yunduan hoped his father would remain blissfully ignorant. Ms. Fong reassured him, "That old man has always been like this, but don't worry. I'm here, as are the land officer and the elderly men from the clan." Shao Yunduan nodded, determined. "One understand Niall." That's why he engaged in philanthropic activities such as donating fields and building schools and libraries. In doing so, he knew that the village would undoubtedly side with him and the first section of the family, unless he proved to be a truly malicious person beyond redemption. Before he departed for the capital, he planned to inform the land officer and the elderly men from the clan to take care of the family. With Mom as the pillar of strength, he wouldn't need to worry so much. They continued their meal, focusing on the food and temporarily setting aside the family conflicts. They had grown accustomed to elder uncle's occasional peculiar reactions, so it didn't affect their mood. They continued to enjoy their dinner, savoring the delicious food. Xiao Sanlang and Yang Xiaoni praised the delectable dishes, relishing the flavors as they consumed 2 bowls of soup each. Satisfied and satiated, they set down their chopsticks. With the new year approaching, 5th sister-in-law was preparing to accompany 5th brother on a trip to the capital. They wouldn't be able to return home for at least 6 months, and it was possible that Shao Yunduan would also be assigned to work elsewhere. The absence of their cooking and presence would be felt. The next day, it was time for Shao Yunduan and Xiao Xian to present gifts to County Magistrate Qiao, as they did every year. Following their usual practice, they didn't offer anything from their own home, but instead purchased various items in the county. Their financial situation was prosperous, although the exact extent of their wealth remained unknown. However, it was evident that they were not lacking in funds. This year, they bought an abundance of gifts, including 10 live chickens and 10 ducks, several packs of snacks, as well as tea and wine. They proudly displayed their offerings, and it was widely acknowledged that recommended man Shao and second Miss deeply cared for their family. Shao Yunduan and Qiao Xin couldn't help but feel a sense of betrayal from their own family, especially considering the way Madame Qiao and Officer Qiao treated them during the visit. Officer Qiao appeared visibly uncomfortable, while Madame Qiao feigned illness. Qiao Wei dutifully attended to her mother, choosing to remain absent as well. Even concubine Du and Qiao Ko seemed to conveniently disappear whenever Madame Qiao was not around. What made the situation even more absurd was that after Qiao Xian expressed her dissatisfaction with Madame Qiao, Officer Qiao actually acknowledged some of her grievances. This led to a heated argument between the couple and exposed deeper issues within their marriage. As a result, Officer Qiao decided to improve his treatment of concubine Du and Qiao Ko, rather than mistreating them. However, he inadvertently discovered that Madame Qiao had unjustly taken away concubine Du's private savings. This revelation filled him with fury, leading to a confrontation with Madame Qiao. In an attempt to make amends, Officer Qiao compensated concubine Du with 6 fine garments, 5 or 6 pieces of jadeware, and 400 liang as restitution for her loss. Madame Qiao, as the head of the family, was expected to bear the responsibility for her actions, and the humiliation she caused concubine Du returning the items was akin to admitting fault and acknowledging her wrongdoing. Chapter 884. Madame Qiao Udap by Zinvel. CM The compensation provided by Officer Qiao seemed to have a positive effect. Both concubine Du and her daughter were overjoyed and grateful for the gesture. Madame Qiao and Qiao Wei, on the other hand, were seething with anger. They felt that they had been openly humiliated and disrespected. While Officer Qiao believed that he had salvaged his wife's reputation, Madame Qiao saw it as a direct affront. She couldn't fathom how concubine Du, who held a lower status in the household, could be treated with such favoritism. Before Madame Qiao could even contemplate taking revenge on concubine Du, her daughter Qiao Wei, driven by her own foolishness, stooped to picking on Qiao Ko. It was an opportunity too tempting for Qiao Ko to pass up. She skillfully played the victim, shedding tears in front of County Magistrate Qiao, ultimately resulting in Qiao Wei's punishment. County Magistrate Qiao, now exasperated with Madame Qiao, voiced his dissatisfaction with her lack of kindness and proper manners. He felt that she was undeserving of her position as the lineal mother, as she had failed to guide and nurture not only Qiao Xian, but also Qiao Ko. Furthermore, County Magistrate Qiao declared that Madame Qiao would no longer have any involvement in concubine Du or Qiao Ko's affairs, including Qiao Ko's marriage. Once they moved to the capital, he planned to seek the assistance of his mother and sisters-in-law in finding a suitable match for Qiao Ko. Madame Qiao erupted in fury and engaged in a heated argument with her husband. She saw herself as the lineal mother, and the fact that she couldn't even arrange a suitable suitor for the daughter of a concubine was a humiliating blow to her status and authority. She felt like a complete laughingstock. Madame Qiao had envisioned making a grand entrance when returning to the capital, but with the current situation, it would be a humiliating affair. She couldn't bear the thought of such embarrassment befalling her. Mother? Sister-in-laws? The so-called Madame Qiao Sr. in the capital was not County Magistrate Qiao's biological mother, and they shared no close bond whatsoever. Besides, if they were to discover the truth, Madame Qiao would lose any position she held in their hearts. However, County Magistrate Qiao was genuinely angered this time. He treated Madame Qiao with cold indifference and refused to back down. But so what if she wasn't his real mother? She had raised him as her own, practically fulfilling a mother's role. At the very least, she had never mistreated him, unlike his wife, who showed such cruelty towards the daughter of a concubine. Madame Qiao's irritation grew, leading her to feign illness as the new year approached. She avoided taking on any responsibilities in the mansion, curious to witness the chaos that would ensue in her absence. Her pretense of illness served a dual purpose, not only to avoid encountering Qiao Xian, but also to test the waters of the mansion without her leadership. County Magistrate Qiao sensed the chilly reception from both Shao Yunduan and Qiao Xian. He felt a sense of guilt and discontent in his heart. While Qiao Xian had endured mistreatment, County Magistrate Qiao was still her father. No child would easily blame their own father for anything. He had indeed raised her, hadn't he? Yes, it was fortunate that they had eventually found a suitable suitor for her. Furthermore, she was not entirely blameless in this situation. County Magistrate Qiao had been occupied with numerous banquets and had little time to attend to domestic affairs. Had she spoken up and sought his assistance from the beginning, he would have come to her aid, but she chose to remain silent. How unreasonable of her to now blame him for her own silence. He had taken action by punishing his wife and treating his daughter well, hoping to demonstrate his favor towards her. Yet, She continued to lay blame and even displayed an air of superiority before him. How heartless! County Magistrate Qiao felt a mixture of anger and disappointment as these thoughts raced through his mind. However, Qiao Xian seemed unfazed by his emotions. She soon smiled and expressed her desire to visit Madame Qiao. Madame Qiao was unwell and needed to be shown concern. Upon hearing the way she referred to Madame Qiao, County Magistrate Qiao seized the opportunity to remark, "Regardless of what has transpired between you two, she is still your lineal mother. You will have plenty of chances to see each other in the capital. If you address her in such a manner, people will ridicule you for being disrespectful." Chapter 885 Unimportant Udat by Zinvel. CM Qiao Xian found amusement in the situation. One don't mind being the subject of laughter. When people inquire why I address her that way, I can simply tell them the truth. It's a fact, isn't it? There's no need to hide it. Father, please don't make things difficult for me. I cannot bring myself to call her mother. She has been too malicious for me to do so at this moment. Enough. County Magistrate Qiao's anger surged as he snapped. What are you talking about? Your mother has found you a good suitor, and you should express your gratitude to her. The past is in the past, and you're doing well now. What more do you want? Are you blaming me as well, Father? Qiao Xian was about to respond when Shao Yunduan interjected. Whether my wife forgives you or not is inconsequential. County Magistrate Qiao was taken aback, suddenly realizing that he may have misspoke. If he were to ask for forgiveness, did that imply an admission of guilt? He was her father, and he believed he had done nothing wrong. Parents held the utmost authority in a family. He had given her life, raised her, and secured a good marriage for her. Everything seemed perfectly reasonable. He saw no fault in his actions. County Magistrate Qiao promptly aligned himself with the perception of reason, standing tall. Shao Yunduan didn't let the matter rest. Father-in-law, if you genuinely seek my wife's forgiveness, you should ask for it, shouldn't you? Ask for forgiveness? County Magistrate Qiao was far from pleased. Why must he ask Qiao Xian for forgiveness? I am her father. Qiao Xian sneered, her voice dripping with sarcasm. Indeed, and that's why we need to put on a good show at the very least. County Magistrate Qiao's heart skipped a beat. What do you mean by that? Shao Yunduan stood his ground. That is precisely what we mean. You, County Magistrate Qiao trembled, a mix of surprise and anger coursing through him. A good show? Yunduan, do you even understand what you're saying? You're not even an official yet, and you're trying to distance yourself from me? Do you realize how difficult it is to succeed in government without any connections? County Magistrate Qiao was both furious and scornful. He had expected this son-in-law of his to be of assistance, but here he was, slipping away before even joining their ranks. This impractical man wouldn't go far in life. I don't care about being an official. I care about my wife. When Shao Yunduan uttered those words, County Magistrate Qiao instantly lost interest. His disappointment grew, and he began to look down on him. How lacking in ambition. How narrow-minded. Well, he was from the countryside after all. His horizons were limited. He didn't understand how to strive for progress and mistakenly believed he had reached the pinnacle by becoming a mere recommended man. County Magistrate Qiao sneered, feeling that he had misjudged Shao Yunduan. What a short-sighted and absurd man. In that instant, County Magistrate Qiao gave up on Shao Yunduan. He had contemplated teaching him the ways of an official in the government office, even considering providing him with a recommendation letter to meet the Qiao family in the capital or relying on their support. However, his interest waned completely. Let this man encounter difficulties in the capital. Only then would he understand the challenges a real official must face. At that time, he would come to realize the childishness and absurdity of his current words and actions. Chapter 886 Building Bridge Udat by Zinvel. CM the county magistrate sneered inwardly, quietly remarking, Your mother's unwell, so we won't keep you for lunch. Qiao Xian, go visit your mother, and then you may leave. Okay. Qiao Xian smiled, stood up, and paid no attention to his sudden coldness, causing County Magistrate Qiao to feel a sense of futility in his actions. Xiao Yinduan chimed in, "Sweetheart, hurry up. I'm waiting for you here. Let's go home as soon as possible. It's getting cold." "Okay." The two exchanged a glance and smiled, completely disregarding County Magistrate Qiao. County Magistrate Qiao couldn't help but feel an urge to curse. Very well, he would witness their failure. When Xiao Xian arrived at the courtyard, the maid passed on the message to Madame Qiao. After waiting for a while without her appearing, Xiao Xian couldn't help but grin. This lineal mother of hers was playing the same tricks she always did. Was she purposefully avoiding her to create a scene? Xiao Xian entered directly. Madame Qiao wasn't actually ill. Even if she was feeling unwell, it was primarily due to County Magistrate Qiao's attitude towards her. She sat on the bed, looking pale and with hair loss, far from her former elegance. Qiao Wei was seated beside her, complaining about something, likely involving Qiao Ko and concubine Du. As Xiao Xian walked in, Qiao Wei shrieked, "Why did you enter? You're not allowed." Xiao Xian smiled. "I came to greet Madame Qiao and see how she is doing. It appears that Madame Qiao is in good health, so I will take my leave now." Qiao Wei stood there, unsure of what to do next. Madame Qiao wore a sinister expression. "Stop. Is there something you want to say, Madame Qiao?" "Hee hee. Xiao Xian, do you think you're satisfied?" Madame Qiao sneered. "Your words from before have made the old master care about concubine Du and Xiao Ko. He gives them everything, while you have received nothing." Qiao Wei also sneered with anger. "She deserves nothing. Father has never shown any affection toward her. Not in the past, not now. She's just trying to gain favor. A pitiful person serving us." "A pitiful person?" Xiao Xian smiled and intentionally raised her wrist, caressing the emerald bracelet adorning it. "My husband is the provincial champion, and he, my mother-in-law, and my sister-in-laws all treat me exceptionally well. Elder Aunt Yuezheng regards me as her own daughter. Are you absurd enough to think I envy Qiao Ko?" Qiao Wei became infuriated, panting heavily. Xiao Xian was so vexing. No wonder she had never liked her. Madame Qiao felt a pang in her heart, sneering, "You certainly know how to harm others and benefit yourself." "Harm others? Who have I harmed?" Madame Qiao was taken aback by Xiao Xian's words. Indeed, it was her that Xiao Xian was referring to, but she couldn't admit it, or she would be admitting defeat in this battle. Xiao Xian smiled. "Not harming you, right? Madame Qiao, Qiao Ko addresses your mother, and I'm sure you have affection for her as well." Madame Qiao remained silent. Xiao Wei could no longer tolerate it. "Just leave." Xiao Xian stood up and smiled. "My husband is waiting for me, and my mother-in-law is eagerly awaiting my return for the meal. My brother-in-law has just hunted a wild deer, so tonight we'll be enjoying braised venison, stir-fried venison, and deer bone stew, very fresh and delicious. Tomorrow, we'll be grilling the rest. Indeed, it's time for me to go home." Chapter 887. Not Lying Udat by Zinvel. "See him, Madame Qiao. Please take care of yourself. Remember, Qiao Ko is not yet married, and she could use your support and guidance." Xiao Xian's words pierced Madame Qiao's heart, leaving her furious and distressed. However, she refused to let it bother her. Her intention was to provoke Madame Qiao, and seeing her infuriated brought her immense satisfaction. It also whetted her appetite for dinner. "She is so malicious," Qiao Wei blurted out, stumbling over her words. "No wonder I despise her, always have. Did you see that, Mom? She has never been this irritating before. I should have dealt with her even more harshly earlier." "Deer meat?" She was just boasting. Qiao Wei reminisced about the time when her father's servant hunted a deer and gifted them over 10 kilograms of meat. She was enchanted by its taste, and the memory lingered in her mind. She couldn't believe that Xiao Xian's brother-in-law could obtain deer meat. The idea seemed far-fetched to her. Madame Qiao's expression darkened. She couldn't fathom that Xiao Xian would lie about such a matter. If Xiao Xian truly had a skillful brother-in-law who could hunt deer, It implied that he possessed exceptional hunting abilities and could provide them with a variety of wild game regularly. Deer were notoriously challenging to hunt due to their cautiousness and swiftness. If Qiao Xian's brother-in-law could catch a deer, he would surely be capable of capturing smaller animals as well. Yet, Qiao Xian had never brought any wild animal for them. Even if she claimed that her brother-in-law had acquired the deer the previous day, there was no evidence of it in the gifts she presented to them today. Madame Qiao, filled with annoyance, turned to Auntie Ling and commanded, "Inform the old master about what Qiao Xian said to us." "Yes, Madame Qiao." Auntie Ling was skilled in stoking the flames, and she was determined to do just that. Word of this quickly reached County Magistrate Qiao's ears. He learned that Qiao Xian's brother-in-law possessed exceptional hunting skills, resulting in their consumption of wild game throughout the year. Furthermore, it was reported that he had recently captured a wild deer. However, neither his daughter nor his son-in-law had considered offering any of it to him as a gift. County Magistrate Qiao's fury swelled upon hearing this news. Initially, he contemplated sending someone to investigate the matter, but he quickly dismissed the idea. What purpose would it serve to delve into such a matter? Discovering the truth would be utterly humiliating. Moreover, the story held an air of believability. He had underestimated them. Qiao Xian had never been one to display modesty or honesty. She harbored numerous ulterior motives, and his wife's judgment of her had never been wrong. He decided to wait and see what Qiao Xian and Shao Yunduan would do next. He was confident that they would eventually come begging at his door, seeking his assistance. So County Magistrate Qiao, who had been persuaded by Madame Qiao, wrote one letter to the Qiao family in the capital, telling them to look into Shao Yunduan and give him a hard time. Shao Yunduan and Qiao Xian left the mansion, and Shao Yunduan took Qiao Xian's hands, saying, "What about eating at Restaurant Yinhe? Then we can go home after that." Qiao Xian nodded with a smile. "Sure, I want a crispy duck from there. Let's take one portion home." The couple did not ask for a separate room after going into the restaurant, but chose a place in the hall. Many people recognized Shao Yunduan, as did the manager of the restaurant, who greeted him happily. Shao Yunduan and Qiao Xian went to the in-laws' family to give presents, but they did not even get to eat lunch at home. Soon the story would go that the couple were forced to eat at a restaurant. Chapter 888, Purpose Udat by Zenvel. CM, that was the reason Qiao Xian and Shao Yunduan chose to have lunch at this particular restaurant. It hadn't crossed Qiao Xian's mind until they sat down and began ordering. She suddenly realized, "Oh, 1C." She then smiled at Shao Yunduan. Shao Yunduan lightly pinched her wrist and whispered, "He initiated this first, and we have nothing to hide. Well, let him experience what it feels like to have no defense." Qiao Xian's heart warmed, and she smiled. "Darling, your words make me even hungrier. We're definitely going to indulge in more delicious food later." Shao Yunduan chuckled. "All right, they'll have an extra bowl of rice with you. Let's order 2 additional dishes." Qiao Xian laughed and nodded. "Sound good. A celebration indeed." "Absolutely." They exchanged smiles. After finishing their lunch, they packed a portion of crispy duck to take home and leisurely made their way back. As expected, news of this incident spread throughout the town. People were fond of hearing and discussing gossip related to officials' families, often sharing such information among themselves. 3 days later, County Magistrate Qiao learned about the incident from a reluctant informant. Anger surged within him, clogging his chest. Those 2 wretches. They must have done this deliberately. They were intentionally tarnishing his reputation. County Magistrate Qiao had never anticipated that this couple possessed so many tricks, successfully setting him up without revealing their hand. Pay a visit to Shouting Village. Never mind. We'll see what else they're capable of. Bah, I shouldn't dwell on this. County Magistrate Qiao sneered, knowing that he would soon be transferred back to the capital. This country was far removed from the capital, so the story wouldn't reach there. Their tricks would have no practical impact on his reputation, except perhaps in his own mind for a brief moment. It was all utterly useless. How dare Shao Yunduan engage in such futile endeavors? He had overestimated him in the past. Little did he know that Shao Yunduan was laying the groundwork for a larger scheme by starting with these small actions. Shao Yunduan and Xiao Xian aimed to sever all ties with County Magistrate Qiao and the Qiao family so that they could separate completely. Even if a major incident were to occur eventually, no one would be able to morally condemn them, thanks to the foundation they had built through these minor actions. If the world came to know that County Magistrate Qiao and Madame Qiao had never truly cared about or treated them as part of the family, dealing with the situation would be much easier. Xiao Xian was elated that County Magistrate Qiao had been ensnared. More importantly, she was grateful to have someone who protected and defended her, a feeling she relished. As for her father, she knew he would despise her for orchestrating all of this. But that was precisely what she intended. The ancestors were honored with tribute during the Minor New Year, and now the eve of the new year had arrived. The first section of the family celebrated New Year's Eve in solitude. Shao Yunduan was preparing to travel to the capital to take part in the spring examination, while Qi was set to join the army. It would be a considerable amount of time before the entire family could be reunited in one place. As a result, they were eagerly anticipating this year's dinner together. Eldest uncle had initially planned to gather all three branches of the family for a joyous and lively celebration. However, various circumstances arose, leading to the second branch being estranged from the family, and it wouldn't be appropriate for the third branch to celebrate alone. Thus, eldest uncle chose not to bring up the idea. On New Year's Eve, the family members were engaged in putting up couplets, hanging paper cuttings, displaying auspicious words, and hanging lanterns. The atmosphere was filled with anticipation and happiness. Chapter 889. Extra Many People Yudat by Zinvel. Ms. Yin graciously assisted Taotao and Ms. Su in creating paper cuttings, including designs such as 5 blessings for longevity, good grains, more than every year, precious flowers and birds, pomegranate vase, peonies blooming, birds and flowers, magpies, and plum blossoms. Nis. Yin possessed great skill in this craft. With paper in one hand and scissors in the other, she swiftly brought forth intricate and beautiful patterns. The rest of the family admired her talent and craftsmanship. The paper cuttings adorning the glazed windows appeared stunning, each lifelike and displaying a variety of patterns and designs. A string of red lanterns hung gracefully under the eaves of the corridor. Round in shape, neither too big nor too small, they were adorned with golden tassels. When lit at night, their gentle red glow cast an auspicious and festive ambience throughout the courtyard. Shao Yunduan took on the task of writing the couplets, meticulously crafting them on red paper. Over the years, Shao Yunduan had shouldered this responsibility. In fact, he had even helped numerous villagers with their couplets as well. This year, many people sought his assistance. After all, Shao Yunduan was no longer just a cultivated talent. He had achieved the esteemed title of provincial champion. Though the act of writing remained the same, the significance held greater weight. Couplets penned by a provincial champion undoubtedly brought more auspiciousness than those written by a cultivated talent. Furthermore, if Shao Yunduan were to ascend to the ranks of an advanced scholar or become an official, he would not readily distribute couplets. Perhaps only the land officer and certain elderly men within the clan would receive them, while other families would refrain from making such requests out of respect for government officials. However, Shao Yunduan did not decline any request this time. The atmosphere in the village was filled with joy and excitement as people gathered around a table that was brimming with guests. There was a constant flow of visitors entering and leaving the first branch of the family's house. In the past, some individuals would seek out Shao Lulang to write couplets alongside Shao Yunduan. As a result, Shao Lulang would receive more guests. This was because the first branch of the family never boasted about Shao Yunduan, while Ms. Ma and third uncle continuously praised Shao Lulang. This led people to believe that he was superior to Shao Yunduan, resulting in more guests seeking his services. However, no one approached the third branch of the family to request couplets. Honestly, Couplets written by someone who hadn't passed the examination were never on par with those crafted by a provincial champion. Only those lacking discernment would seek couplets from someone other than the provincial champion. Ms. Ma and third uncle had eagerly anticipated villagers seeking their couplets, as it was a day they took immense pride in. They simply relished the praise and the sight of others feeling envious. But this year, no one came knocking on their door, and as they saw two individuals walking by, it soon became apparent that they were merely passers-by. The couple grew increasingly frustrated. "Don't you need couplets?" they grumbled. "What nonsense!" It was clear to them that everyone was headed to the first branch of the family to acquire couplets. The villagers were all so eager and interested. The couple muttered curses under their breath, their worry for their son weighing heavily on their minds. Indeed, Shao Lulang wore a frown as he surveyed the empty courtyard. Despite being up early that day, he couldn't help but feel disappointed. After all, he had secluded himself in his room for days. Chapter 890, Intra-Seeker Udat by Zinvel. See him instantly, Ms. Ma grew concerned. "Lulang, it would be best if those people weren't here. They would only disrupt your focused study." "How irritating!" Shao Lulang sneered, fully aware of what was happening. Ms. Ma's worry deepened at his reaction. "They look down on us, those seekers of attention. None of them are deserving of our presence. When you achieve success, they will come begging at our doorstep, and that's when it will teach them a lesson they won't forget. Lulang, ignore them. Don't let it bother you," Ms. Ma advised. Shao Lulang suppressed his anger and irritation, his sneer growing darker. "They are nobody. I don't care about them in the slightest." With that, he turned around, entered his room, and slammed the door shut. Ms. Ma and second uncle exchanged concerned and worried glances. They sighed and continued to curse the villagers under their breath. Xiao Xiaoji observed the scene for a while, pursed her lips, and spoke up. "But we don't have any couplets or happiness writings yet. Are we not going to hang any?" Ms. Ma and third uncle exchanged a telling look. That was true. They had neglected to prepare anything for themselves. Of course, they needed to hang some for the new year to attract auspiciousness. Usually, Shao Lulang took charge of this task, but this year, with the somber expression on their son's face and his obvious bad mood, neither of them dared to ask him to come and write couplets. So, were they going to seek help from the first section of the family for this matter? In that way, they would further dampen their son's spirits. After contemplating for a while, the couple decided to send third uncle to the town to bring back a couplet for their home. In the afternoon, when Shao Lulang emerged from his room and noticed the couplets hanging on the door, he immediately flew into a rage. However, his anger subsided upon learning that they were provided by the county. They would never allow anything written by Shao Yinduan to be displayed on their door. Meanwhile, Shao Yinduan spent half a day diligently crafting couplets for the villagers. Ms. Fong grew increasingly concerned about her son's well-being. After lunch, the entire family busied themselves with the preparations for the New Year's Eve feast. They had an abundance of food stocked at home, and this year, the dishes on the table were set to be even more plentiful and exquisite. They had commenced the preparations 2 days earlier, with Qiao Xian suggesting various dishes. After deliberations among the family members, they finalized the menu. The grand finale of the evening's feast was the Buddha jumping over the wall, a dish brimming with delicacies from both land and sea, boasting vibrant colors and enticing aromas. Other dishes included salt-baked chicken, braised carp, chicken nuggets with soft-shelled turtle, and pan-fried lamb chops. The table was adorned with a wide array of culinary delights. As night descended, everyone gathered around the steaming dining table in the restaurant. 2 large covered charcoal pots burned inside the room, emanating a comforting warmth. The charcoal used was the special silver frost coal bestowed upon them by First Madam, which they rarely utilized. This type of coal produced no smoke or odor. To enhance the festive atmosphere, they uncorked a jar of fine wine. With the exception of the 3 children, everyone else was served a glass. "Let us celebrate joyously, and may prosperity befall us all." With cups raised, The heartfelt toast evoked tears in Ms. Fang's eyes. As the new year commenced, her two sons were embarking on their respective paths, and although she felt immense pride, she couldn't help but feel a tinge of longing. Though they were all aware of the impending separation, nobody mentioned it. They savored the delectable dishes and engaged in cheerful conversations, discussing their plans for financial success. You're tuning in to the Romance Rendezvous YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.